subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
How about this? Since both of you are here with nothing particular to do, why don't you help me find a suitable look for Darkrai? Dak felt that continuing like this wouldn't do. So, he involved Mihawk and Guion to see if they could help him complete the main quest. A look. Guion tilted her head, looking at Darkrai. Yes, as individuals, Pokemon naturally have their own styles. In the world they live in, there's a profession called Pokemon beauticians. And in our field as breeders, we are also required to possess a certain level of skill in Pokemon grooming. I'm currently practicing, but I'm at a loss for ideas. Interesting. Guion's eyes lit up when she heard what Dak said. Although Guion wasn't like the average girl, she would relax by studying beauty and makeup during her spare time. Now hearing about grooming Pokemon, she naturally became interested. Boring. Mihawk wasn't deliberately opposing Guion. He was just expressing his true feelings from the bottom of his heart. However, since he had nothing better to do, he stayed to watch, without any intention of leaving. If you're not interested, you can leave. I won't. Mihawk's words nearly made Guion have a brain hemorrhage. If it weren't for the fact that they were inside the breeding house, Guion would have definitely swung her sword by now. All right, Darkrai, come here and let Miss Guion take a look at you. Dak quickly stopped the brewing conflict. He couldn't even begin to imagine what would happen if Newgate and Sengoku, Garp and Dragon, Luffy and Smoker were to meet in his shop. Darkrai approached Guion without any objections. In his view, nobody could make him look worse than Dak and Bon had. However, he was wrong. Guion indeed knew how to apply makeup, but only women's makeup. When Darkrai saw himself in the full-body mirror with bright red lipstick, false eyelashes, and blush on his face, he almost buried his head in the ground. Guion even combed his flowing hair down into a middle part. Ha 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 ha. Mihawk laughed. This was the first time Dak had seen Mihawk laugh so openly, which genuinely startled him. He had never seen Mihawk laugh like this before, and now, Mihawk's laughter reminded him of Uchiha Madara's maniacal laughter. What are you laughing at? Guion was annoyed. Her sword was drawn horizontally across Mihawk's neck. Can't even hold a sword steady. Don't bother drawing it at all. Mihawk wasn't the least bit flustered. Instead, he looked at Guion's trembling hands and blade with a mocking gaze. Inside the breeding house, everyone's strength was suppressed to the level of a Totodile. Physical strength decreased, and neither Haki nor Devil Fruit abilities could be used. Guion and Mihawk being able to wield large swords was already quite impressive. Guion realized the kind of suppression power spoken of by Tsuru. Truly terrifying. Guion sheathed her sword and glanced at Dak. With such a terrifying suppression power, the breeding house could run rampant across the seas, and they could simply hide inside if others dared to enter, waiting for their doom. No wonder the breeding house dared to warn and threaten Navy. In just a moment, Bon had already washed off the makeup from Darkrai's face before he could get angry. Mihawk-san, how about you give some suggestions? Dak then turned his attention back to Mihawk. Honestly, there was something oddly similar between Mihawk and Darkrai. A suggestion? Trouble. Just wearing a hat or a scarf would do. Mihawk seemed to find it somewhat boring and spoke dismissively. And with that single sentence, Dak suddenly realized what he should do. In the Pokemon world, indeed, many beauticians put quite flamboyant makeup on Pokemon, which seems to be the only thing they consider beauty-worthy. But Dak forgot, among most ordinary trainers, adding a little something to their Pokemon already counted as dressing them up. Like Meowth wearing boots, Pikachu with a hat, or Trico biting a twig. Most Pokemon do not like having things added to them. Especially Darkrai, who often has to battle, would find those things burdensome. Only Pokemon that are primarily for companionship, or rather, kept as pets, wouldn't mind having those flashy decorations. Oh, that's it. Dak suddenly understood what he needed to do. Darkrai looked at Dak, already having lost faith in Dak's aesthetic sense. Hats won't work. Scarves neither. Dak circled around Darkrai, then shook his head. The flowing white hair and red serrated neckband were Darkrai's signature, which couldn't be covered. That would be uncool. Dak looked at Darkray's bare torso, had an idea, ran back to his bedroom, and brought back a strip of ice blue ribbon, then tied it around Darkray's left arm. The color of the ribbon matched the color of Darkray's eyes, making it somewhat match. Wow, don't tell me, just this simple touch, and it actually looks good. Bond commented from his side. In his view, at least Darkray's body didn't look so monotonous anymore. Darkray glanced at his reflection in the mirror, felt indifferent, then looked at Dak, who was looking forward to his approval. Well, it didn't bother him. Dak. Darkray nodded, giving Dak a bit of recognition. Dak was delighted, genuinely happy to have received Darkray's approval. He didn't even notice that his personal panel in breeding had reached LV.2. Main quest: Pokémon grooming course completed. Rewards: evolution of tree, lake, and warm lamp. Effects: the tree can now produce a large amount of berries for Pokémon to eat. The lake can now be used to keep marine life. The sunlight from the warm lamp can accelerate the hatching of Pokémon eggs. Dak had yet to observe the changes in the store when a new system prompt arrived. A new main quest has been assigned. Main quest: Breeding Course 3, Skill Teaching. Content: teach a Pokémon to learn a new move. Reward: Pokémon check, recovery device, magical store. Seeing this reward, Dak immediately opened the magical store to search what exactly it was, only to find, to his surprise, that it wasn't just one thing, but two machines. Check device provides a comprehensive check of a Pokémon and organizes a detailed data panel about that Pokémon, an essential machine in Pokémon research institutes. Recovery device strongly restores a Pokémon's physical strength, quickly repairs injuries caused by battles, an essential machine in Pokémon centers. Both are great items. Together they cost 10k magical coins. The price for both devices in a magical store is 5,000 magical coins each, equivalent to 500 million belly. Fortunately, this task isn't very difficult. With Darkray's gold tier potential, learning a new move is a simple task, right? Into Chapter 25. Chapter 25. Hey Dak, this tree suddenly sprouted a bud. Bond suddenly noticed the changes in the shop and quickly tapped Dak on the shoulder. Guion and Mihawk also noticed the buds that had suddenly appeared on the tree, with pink bases and yellow tips, looking particularly beautiful. Not only that, they also sensed other changes in the breeding house. For example, the light from the lamp on the ceiling seemed to undergo some changes they couldn't detect. If they had observation hockey, perhaps they could have seen it. But here, their hockey was suppressed, making it impossible to notice such subtle changes. Ah, it's fine. It'll bear fruit in a few days. Dak waved his hand and glanced at it before moving on. Dak, do you practice swordsmanship? Suddenly, Mihawk asked. Dak instinctively turned his gaze to meet Mihawk's battle-intent eyes. Mihawk's question also piqued Guion's interest, who looked at Dak. Of course, she might be more interested in gathering information about Dak for the Navy. After all, for everyone else, including Bond, everyone felt the mystique and high-quality atmosphere of the magical breeding house, as well as Darkray's strength, so they subconsciously thought Dak was stronger, but they had never seen Dak take action. I'm not one to get physical with customers, and I'm not good with swords. Dak replied diplomatically, trying to hide his unease. Pity. Then you'll be my opponent. It just so happens that this place can level the physical and hockey differences between us. Mihawk shook his head and then turned to Guion. Mihawk, sir, this place isn't for you to fight in. Your battle could harm the eggs. Before Guion could speak, Dak already interrupted his idea. If they let these two fight today, would more people come to fight in the future? So, this precedent cannot be set. Well, it seems there's nothing interesting left here. I'll be leaving first. Mihawk withdrew his gaze and walked towards the exit, as aloof as ever. Then, I'll take my leave as well, shopkeeper Dak. Guion seemed much more polite, bowing slightly before turning to leave. Watching the two leave, Bond finally spoke. Looking at that woman's attitude, does it seem like the Navy might fully cooperate with us? Not just likely, it's inevitable. Dak pursed his lips. Not just the Navy. When the power of Pokémon becomes well known across the sea, every organization and power will want to use this force to build armies. These matters have nothing to do with their magical breeding house. They just need to find suitable trainers for the Pokémon, and the rest will be decided by the Pokémon themselves. What do we do now? No need to do anything special yet. The time hasn't come. Dak smiled and shook his head. Before the Pokémon from Whitebeard Pirates and the Navy are born, their magical breeding house hasn't reached the stage for rapid development. Peaceful days came again, and time flew by for another week. In the newly marked locations, familiar ones like Alabasta and Sabati Archipelago were places where key battles took place in the original story. Dak even probed for news in both places. Crocodile had been in Alabasta for 5 years, renowned as a great hero. But the people had not realized Alabasta was gradually becoming poorer and more chaotic. Many were angry with the royal Nefertari family, blaming the king's inaction for their plight. Unbeknownst to them, everything was developing exactly as Crocodile had envisioned, and the Baroque works was also in the process of being formed. In Sabati Archipelago, Dak learned that Jinbei had just become a warlord, leading to the split of the Sun Pirates. This news wasn't particularly useful to Dak, but it helped confirm the current timeline and upcoming events. Dak often took Bon out with him during these days. They would go out for an entire day, close the shop, and then come back late at night, battered and bruised. No, Dak was training with Bon. Bon's physical condition was exactly at level 2 in all 3 attributes, a decent level for the 4 Cs, making him a perfect sparring partner for Dak. Dak also taught Bon how to practice armament hockey. Initially, Bon was surprised to learn how weak Dak was, but thinking about Darkrai, he didn't care much anymore. Honestly, if he had a bodyguard as strong as Darkrai, he'd just relax. Who would want to strive when they can slack off? With the daily tasks providing 3-dimensional experience and sparring with Bon, Dak's attributes reached level 3 within a week, reaching a first-class level in the 4 Cs. If there had to be a standard, it was the level of Sanji when he first joined the crew. This sudden gap in strength shocked Bon. He didn't understand how Dak suddenly surpassed him so much right under his nose, prompting him to start working hard. Dak was happy to see this. However, the main task was more challenging than Dak thought. It wasn't that Darkrai was slow in learning new skills. Darkrai simply already knew too many skills, making it hard for Dak to remember any new skills that Darkrai could learn but hadn't mastered yet. During this period, Bon was amazed by the variety of skills he saw. Fire, water, ice, electricity, grass, and various other skills dazzled Bon, deepening his understanding of Pokémon. And that's not all. By the end of the week, Dak discovered Darkrai could potentially learn Rain Dance, a skill Darkrai didn't yet know, so they immediately started learning. Actually, Dak had no idea how to teach. It was all Darkrai's own comprehension, which was very quick. He learned it in an afternoon. When Bon saw Darkrai could even alter the natural weather, his jaw dropped and didn't close for a whole minute. After completing the main task, Dak had Darkrai move the 2 devices into the manufacturing room. The 2 machines were quite large, especially the Pokémon inspection device, which took up a third of the room's area and was nearly 5 meters tall. The recovery device was smaller, resembling a large printer. End of Chapter 26. Chapter 26, a new main mission had also been issued. Main mission, Breeding Course 4, Delivery Objective. As a breeder, you must make thorough preparations before a Pokémon hatches. Please follow the guidebook to successfully assist in the hatching of the Pokémon from its egg. Reward. The shop's floor space will double. Height will not increase. Seeing this main mission, Dak couldn't hold back his excitement. He had thought that such a reward, expanding the shop, would take a long time to come, but it arrived sooner than expected. Currently, the Mystery Hatchery House spans a total of 167.5 square meters, with the shop area covering 100 square meters and the bedroom, manufacturing room, and staff dormitory each occupying 22.5 square meters, all at a uniform height of 10 meters. If everything were to double in size, the shop area would be 200 square meters, and the other 3 areas would each become 45 square meters, totaling 335 square meters, with a height still at 10 meters. Oh my, this is like an epic enhancement. There would no longer be a worry about not having enough space for the many Pokémon offspring. Dak now wondered if the mystery Hatchery House might eventually become a self-contained little world. Calm down. Who knows how long it will take to complete this task? Dak shook his head, took a deep breath, and tried not to get too excited. The Pokemon eggs hadn't shown any activity yet, and it was uncertain how long until they hatch. The effectiveness of the ceiling heat lamps and speeding up hatching was also unknown. Dak struggled to shift his attention back to the two machines in the manufacturing room. The recovery device currently had no use since it was unlikely that Darkrai would get injured. However, the checking device could prove useful. Dak, if you were put on a white coat now, you'd totally look like one of those eccentric scientists. At that moment, there were two Darkrai's standing in front of Dak. One was Bon Clay, who had transformed using the power of the clone fruit. This fascinating form was new to Bon Clay, but he couldn't utilize Darkrai's abilities. It wasn't surprising, after all, it wasn't the copy fruit. The clone fruit merely had the ability to mimic appearances, at least as demonstrated in the original story. It's still up to Bon Clay to further develop it. Perhaps Bon Clay could eventually use the clone fruit's ability to transform into various Pokemon and utilize their skills. Devil fruits are indeed quite whimsical in nature. However, Dak had a sudden idea upon seeing Bon Clay's transformation into Darkrai and decided to inspect the transformed Darkrai. Darkrai, you go in first. Dak, holding a notebook and a pen, intended to take notes. It seemed quite professional. No wonder Bon Clay said so. Dak, after nodding, Darkrai floated into the large glass chamber of the checking device and obediently stayed there. Dak followed the user manual's instructions and pressed a few buttons on the checking device. Soon, several blue light screens swept over Darkrai's body several times back and forth. Darkrai even felt a bit ticklish. The process took about a minute, then the glass cover opened. Is that it? Bon Clay widened his eyes as he saw Darkrai float out. To him, it seemed almost as if nothing had happened. Could such a quick process really reveal anything? Dak also felt puzzled. Could such a short time truly reveal specific information about Darkrai? Darkrai is not just any Pokemon, but a legendary Pokemon. Dak walked over to a computer screen next to the checking device, which had already listed a series of information. Darkrai type, dark ability, bad dreams potential, gold height, 1.5 meters weight, 50 kilograms age, unknown level, LV.85 skills, hypnosis, dark void, dream eater, dark pulse, psychic, hyper beam. It actually detected it. Dak stared at the screen, displaying information about Darkrai, feeling somewhat shocked. There were two aspects that shocked him. First, the level detected by the machine was Darkrai's level in the Pokemon world, not in the world of One Piece, where the system marked Darkrai as LV.100. This means the machine detected Darkrai's true level. Second, the machine could list all the skills possessed by the Pokemon. In such a short time, all of Darkrai's numerous skills appeared on this electronic screen, many of which Dak didn't even know about. However, one aspect seemed beyond what the checking device could achieve. That is Darkrai's age. Honestly, Dak didn't know how old his Darkrai was, but considering the lengthy lifespan of legendary Pokemon, it should be at least 1,000 years old. With such a long lifespan and Darkrai's gold potential, if it practiced every day, it wouldn't need 100 years to reach the max level in the Pokemon world. However, while Pokemon rarely engage in active training and battling, most live a monotonous life of eating, sleeping, and playing. This is even more true for legendary Pokemon, who can sleep for hundreds or thousands of years at a time, allowing their bodies to naturally grow and develop. This might also explain why legendary Pokemon can be defeated by human trainers' Pokemon. Bon Clay, your turn to try. Okay. Bon Clay glanced at the electronic screen, but he didn't understand most of the content. Terms like attributes and abilities were completely foreign to him, and he could only guess at the skills based on their names. Dak watched as Bon Clay stepped into the detection device, then activated the switch. But nothing happened. It doesn't work? Dak shook his head. He had thought that by using the power of the clone fruit, he could fool the machine. It seems that's not the case. How is it? Bond Clay floated out of the device and then transformed back into his own appearance. It doesn't work. All right. By the way, Bond Clay, prepare a notice board. At that moment, Dax suddenly remembered something. What's up? I can't be explaining the situation of the hatchery and Pokémon to every customer who comes by. It's also not polite to always threaten and warn them. I'll just write it on the board, so I don't have to say it again. Dak recalled having to repeat what he said to Newgate to Mihawk and Saru. If he had to do that every time, it would be too tiring. Dak decided to write it on a board and place it at the store's entrance, so customers could see it as soon as they enter. If Dak were out, Bond Clay, who might not be able to explain, could just show them the notice board. Okay, end of chapter 27. Chapter 27, the next morning. Dak brought Darkrai to a desolate village. It was unknown in which sea this village was located, as it had already been abandoned. When Dak first came here, he knew it was a village that had fallen victim to pirates, already in ruins by that time, with not a single soul alive within its decrepit buildings, many of which had been burned down. During that visit, Dak also looked around other parts of the island. It was a very small island, perhaps on the scale of Syrup Village, with only small animals and plants, and little else to be seen. Today, Dak came here specifically to test the full potential of Conqueror's Hockey. Although he was very familiar with the use of Conqueror's Hockey in his mind, he had never practiced it, fearing an accident, so he never tried it inside the shop. Darkrai, are you ready? Dak took Darkrai to a place far from the abandoned village. Darkrai floated in midair and nodded. Its role was to assist Dak in the experiment and to guard against any accidents. Darkrai was also curious about this power, known as Hockey. Dak had plans for Darkrai to learn observation Hockey later. As for armament Hockey, it could be learned in spare time. Most of Darkrai's skills were long-range attacks using special energy, rarely engaging in physical combat with the enemy. So armament Hockey would be less useful for Darkrai. After confirming Darkrai's readiness, Dak began to tap into the power within his heart. There are several ways to use Conqueror's Hockey. The first and most basic application to fusion were Dak's eyes slightly widened, a red circle appearing in his pupils, accompanied by a dark red Hockey radiating outward, instantly casting a semi-transparent blood veil over the surroundings. P.S. Hockey is color in my story, making it look cooler. Even in a clear environment, the surrounding flora seemed to sway as if blown by the wind. Floating in midair, Darkrai, observing the Hockey released by Dak, showed a hint of surprise in its icy blue pupils. It had underestimated the power known as Conqueror's Hockey. If it weren't a legendary Pokémon that had lived for thousands of years, but merely a few years old, it might have submitted to this power or even fainted on the spot. Does the first stage of Conqueror's Hockey have this effect? Dak was somewhat baffled. In his memory, whether it was Ace in his childhood or Luffy during the Summit War, their unintentional diffusion of Conqueror's Hockey seemed only to intimidate the weak and didn't affect the environment. Darkrai seemed eager to see more effects of Conqueror's Hockey. Yeah, okay. Dak nodded. He hadn't realized he was gradually beginning to understand the meanings behind Darkrai's words. The second method, after mastering Conqueror's Hockey, focus. The user controls the Hockey according to their will, with timing, range, and power all under their control. Dak focused his gaze on Darkrai. The dark red Conqueror's Hockey was released again from Dak as the center, but this time there was only one target. Suddenly, the cloth-like parts of Darkrai's body began to flutter. Darkrai gave Dak a thumbs up. Dak nodded and then shifted the target, this time choosing multiple targets, some widely spaced trees. Crack! The moment Dak's Hockey focused, the insides of those trees made a sound of compression and friction. The power has also increased. Dak noticed the difference between the two application methods. Using the same amount of Hockey, the first method had a broader range, but weaker effects and did not differentiate between friend and foe. The second method allowed deliberate control of the release range, resulting in stronger effects and could even harm the weak. Generally, the second method of using Hockey does not physically harm the target. It was merely an unintended effect due to Dak's high level and quality of Hockey. However, this was not a problem, as intentionally weakening it could achieve the same effect as others releasing Conqueror's Haki. This was precisely the purpose of this experiment with Conqueror's Haki. The third way, which can cause significant physical damage to the target, intimidation. This method of release does not require high skill in using Conqueror's Haki, but demands the utmost level and quality of Haki, with few in the vast seas capable of using it. When using Conqueror's Haki this way, Dak involuntarily exuded the aura of a sovereign, and his dark pupils revealed a sharpness. When intimidation was solely applied to Darkrai, its body visibly dropped a distance, though Darkrai quickly recovered. Still, the cloth on Darkrai continued to flutter intensely in the air, obviously still enduring external force. Then Dak applied his Haki to the surrounding environment. Boom! In an instant, the trees around Dak turned into splinters, and the ground appeared as if a hurricane had scraped off a layer, revealing the soil hidden under the grass and stones. Phew! Too exaggerated. Dak retracted his Conqueror's Haki and looked at the surroundings with Darkrai. The previously dense grove had vanished, and the environment could only be described as desolate, a terrifying power. In the original story, Conqueror's Haki could even directly crack ships, and the user of this level of Haki was none other than red-haired Shanks, lauded by many fans as the man with the strongest Conqueror's Haki. He was also the only one capable of causing physical damage to the target with just Conqueror's Haki. Others who wanted to damage the terrain or people with Conqueror's Haki could only achieve similar effects through the residual waves produced by clashes of Conqueror's Haki. The fourth method, which does not require high quality of Conqueror's Haki but demands ultimate skill, binding. Although fewer people in the vast sea can use this method compared to the third, at least there are more. Wrapping Conqueror's Haki around the body or a weapon enhances attack power and lethality while allowing the user to attack the target substantially without direct contact within a certain distance. Binding it to the body. That gave a try. No good. The dark red Haki hadn't wrapped around Dak's fist before he felt intense pain, even with armament Haki as a barrier. My physical fitness isn't up to par. End of chapter 28. Chapter 28 afterwards, Dak picked up a wooden stick to experiment further. However, the moment Conqueror's Haki wrapped around the stick, it was instantly crushed. Is my Conqueror's Haki too lethal? Dak frowned. He picked up another stick, this time reducing the amount of Haki used by a large margin. The originally dark red Haki, like ripples of water, turned into thin threads wrapping around the stick. This time, the stick did not break, though it still seemed to struggle under the pressure. So, he used armament Haki to harden it, turning the entire stick black. This should work. Dak lifted the stick and swung it around, feeling nothing unusual. Dark, huh? Do you want to try? Dak looked at Darkrai floating towards him, somewhat puzzled. He wasn't worried about Darkrai, given his own physical condition. Even if he attacked Darkrai with a weapon wrapped in Conqueror's Haki, the latter wouldn't suffer much damage. Darkrai nodded, clearly eager to try. All right, without further ado, Dak swung the stick. Snap! Darkrai raised a hand to block, and the stick exploded upon impact. The force of the strike, combined with the pressure from Conqueror's Haki, was too much for the stick to bear, and Dak's level of armament Haki was too low to mitigate much of this pressure. Darkrai looked at its hand. Though there were no visible injuries, it felt a significant pain. For Darkrai, it was akin to losing 3 HP. With that, the experimentation with Conqueror's Haki came to an end. Dak now had a clearer understanding of his Conqueror's Haki and could use it inside the shop without injuring his allies. Upon returning to the shop with Darkrai, they found Bon Clay anxiously pacing back and forth under a tree. What's wrong? Dak was puzzled by Bon Clay's behavior. Dak! Before Bon Clay could respond, Darkrai let out a somewhat panicked sound. This was the first time Dak heard such a tone from Darkrai. Following Darkrai's gaze towards the tree, Dak's eyes widened in surprise. The remaining 6 Pokémon eggs from the first batch were flashing at a slow rate. Dak immediately ran over and crouched down, carefully observing the 6 eggs. Dak, what's going on? There's no problem, is there? Also, my egg is starting to glow too. Bon Clay held his pinkish-yellow egg in his arms. Indeed, Bon Clay's egg was also flashing. This is a sign that the Pokémon are about to hatch. Nanny, hearing Dak's explanation, Bon Clay jumped up, holding his egg and running around the lawn in a frenzy. What do we do? What do we do, Dak? Calm down. When did they start glowing? Dak, too nervous to comfort Bon Clay, was equally anxious. After all, this was his first time assisting in the hatching of Pokémon, and the thought of 6 more Pokémon joining Darkrai in his shop filled him with excitement. Just now, about an hour ago. So, within 12 hours, these kids will hatch. Put your egg down and start preparing some things as I told you. Darkrai, you go too. Dak rattled off a list of things for Bon Clay and Darkrai to collect in a flurry. According to the guidebook, when Pokémon eggs start glowing, it means the Pokémon will hatch within the next day. However, considering these first batch of eggs were about to hatch just 2.5 weeks after arriving at the shop, Dak guessed it must be due to the effect of the heat lamps on the ceiling. The heat lamps were upgraded a week and a half ago, accelerating the egg hatching process. Doubling the time of a week and a half to 3 weeks, plus the initial week, roughly made a month, in line with the guidebook statement that Pokémon eggs would hatch a month after being laid. This also proved that the heat lamps could have the hatching time needed for Pokémon eggs. Thus, the 24 hours of flashing should also be halved to 12 hours. And tomorrow is the batch, huh? Dak's gaze fell on the second batch of 9 Pokémon eggs. These eggs arrived just a day later than the first batch, so their hatching time should not differ much. Dak knew the peaceful days of the mystery Hatchery House were coming to an end. They were likely to enter a busy routine of caring for Pokémon babies every day. Right, such an important day. Suddenly, an idea sparked in Dak's mind. What would the guests' reactions be if they saw the Pokémon being born? Seeing the adorable forms of various Pokémon hatching, Dak didn't believe these people could restrain their hearts. Dak stood up, calmed his surging heart, and tried to adopt a casual demeanor before heading outside. The Mystery Hatchery House's first Pokémon hatching ceremony, inviting a few guests to witness it. Pretty normal, right? On the Moby Dick. Newgate was listlessly watching his foolish sons making a ruckus on deck. Fighting, playing cards, arm wrestling, bragging. Just another day in the life of pirates at sea. Meanwhile, Marco sat aside, holding a pink egg, even wrapping it in a scarf. But just then, the captain's quarters door suddenly opened. Everyone on deck cast puzzled glances towards the captain's quarters, a place not just anyone could enter. Who could be so bold? However, upon seeing the person who emerged, Newgate couldn't help but laugh. Grrrr. Dak, what wind blew you here? Long time no see, Newgate. Remember those eggs you saw last time? Dak greeted Newgate. Having gained a certain mastery over his conqueror's haki, Dak's presence and aura had taken a qualitative leap. Many on board could notice Dak's transformation. To put it plainly, he had the aura of a king. Of course. What? You're willing to sell them to me now? No, those kids are about to be born. I'm thinking of inviting a few guests to witness it, to prevent you from being clueless in a similar situation. Interested? Of course. Newgate immediately perked up. I want to go too. Me as well. No, Marco and Thatch already went last time. It's my turn this time. For a moment, the Whitebeard pirates' crew argued among themselves, nearly coming to blows. All right, this time let Jozu and Vista go. There'll be other chances. With a single sentence, Newgate settled the outcome, deciding to take turns. Don't worry, I'll live stream it for you with a din mushy. No problem. Right, shopkeeper? Vista asked Dak with a big smile, showing his white teeth. Of course. End of chapter 29. Chapter 29, when Mihawk followed Dak into the house, he was visibly taken aback. He glanced at Newgate, Jozu, and Vista standing to the left. Then he looked at Sengoku, Saru, and Gion standing on the right. He couldn't help but curl the corners of his mouth slightly upwards, though it quickly settled back into a neutral expression. Dak caught Mihawk's amused expression, feeling that Mihawk was stepping into strange territories. Sengoku's arrival was beyond Dak's expectations. When he went to invite Saru and Gion, not knowing their whereabouts, he had no choice but to head directly to the Marine headquarters. Then Sengoku learned about it, and followed them to the mystery Hatchery House. Dak had underestimated Sengoku's interest in Pokemon, seemingly planning to make a significant impact during his term as Fleet Admiral. The scene inside the mystery Hatchery House was quite interesting. Marines, pirates, and the 7 warlords of the sea, and they were all pinnacle figures in their respective fields. The most interesting aspect was the presence of old rivals Newgate and Sengoku, who had fought from the previous era into this one. Just their standing there, without saying anything, and a few exchanges of glances were enough to make Dak feel the air in the house grow tense. Yo, isn't this the kid who had a big fight with that redhead on Roger's ship a couple of years ago? Seems like he's become quite the character now. Newgate, of course, knew about Mihawk becoming one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Still, he continued to call Mihawk Kid, which Mihawk only responded to with a glance, ignoring him. In terms of seniority, Newgate's title for Mihawk wasn't incorrect. Roger and Newgate were contemporaries, as were Shanks and Mihawk. It's well known that Shanks was taken in by Roger and Rayleigh as a child, making Roger essentially Shanks' foster father. Thus, by that logic, Newgate indeed ranked above Mihawk in seniority. Indeed, even you have set your sights on Pokemon, Hawkeye. Sengoku obviously overthought things. Mihawk couldn't be bothered with him, feeling Sengoku was a bit delusional, seeing every pirate as ambitious and aspiring to dominate the seas. Bon Clay, watching from the sidelines, had a clearly excited expression, thrilled to meet so many top figures all at once. Ladies and gentlemen, please this way. Dak didn't allow the drama to continue, but instead drew everyone's attention. He crouched under a tree, pointing at the 7 Pokemon eggs nestled together. When the eggs start glowing, it means the Pokemon are about to be born within a day. We can judge the timing by the frequency of the glow. Right now, the frequency is very rapid, indicating they're about to hatch. Dak's explanation gave everyone a better understanding. They also looked down at their own eggs, which remained still. Of course, they were unaware of the special effect of the breeding house's heat lamps, and Dak had no intention of explaining. Dak gestured for Bon Clay and Darkrai to bring over the items they had prepared in advance. Firstly, although Pokemon are still in their infancy when they hatch, don't be fooled by their liveliness. They are quite sensitive to their surroundings. You'll need to prepare a warm environment and use a warm, damp towel to clean their bodies. Dak pointed to a basin filled with warm water and towels on the ground, adding, "The temperature here is perfect for juvenile Pokemon to play, so there's no need to change the environment." The crowd showed various reactions to this. Newgate, Sengoku, and Mihawk, the 3 tough guys, clearly appeared troubled. Tsuru and Gion, the women, found it normal, with Tsuru having experience in child-rearing herself. Jozu and Vista, despite being big men, belonged to the type who were tough yet gentle, especially Jozu, who was actually a gentle and steady guy. Different types of Pokemon will show different characteristics and personalities after birth. Some are timid and cry easily, needing more comfort and companionship, while others are bold and lively, requiring close supervision to prevent them from wandering into danger. Dak's words gave everyone an odd feeling. It was as though they weren't raising some strange creature, but nurturing a human child. Infancy in Pokemon passes quickly. For most Pokemon, this period won't last more than a month. After a month, they can begin training and will display potential and power that will astonish you. Dak glanced at the glowing eggs, estimating the little ones were about to be born. Hearing this, the others didn't react much, but Sengoku nodded, seemingly satisfied with the growth cycle. Compared to humans, who need at least 4 to 5 years to begin formal training, Pokemon's growth rate was incredibly fast. Right after birth, you'll want to give them highly nutritious food. I prepared Moo Moo milk here, produced by a Pokemon called Miltank, which is very nutritious and beneficial for infant development. Dak bought the Moo Moo milk with Pokecoins from the Pokemon store. 1 Pokecoin could exchange for a bottle of Moo Moo milk equivalent to 10,000 belly per bottle, a luxury item. But Dak didn't want to skimp on the kids, so he bit the bullet and spent half his savings to exchange for 100 bottles. Dak will take 100 bottles. Then the Marines will take 1,000. We, the Whitebeard pirates, will take 10,000. Then the Marines. Dak watched, bemused, as Newgate and Sengoku suddenly became competitive, not expecting them to compare even in this aspect. Moo Moo milk is expensive, 50,000 belly per bottle. As for its nutritional value, you could take some back for your chefs to study. Dak effortlessly quintupled the price of Moo Moo milk and didn't flinch. He knew they would buy it regardless. And for them, this price was just chump change, even for Mihawk, which was merely the bounty of a pirate. No need to say more, we'll buy it. We will too. Give me a day. As Dak expected, none hesitated or bargained. No worries. Your Pokémon will need at least a week more to hatch. You can take your time preparing, but remember to send the belly over in advance. End of Chapter 30. Chapter 30. From this moment, the Mystery Hatchery House entered a prelude to its rapid development phase. The development of the hatchery was never about selling Pokémon eggs or Pokémon themselves. That was never the case, not even in the world of Pokémon. The growth of the hatchery relies on a variety of services related to Pokémon, such as selling Pokémon-related food, training Pokémon for trainers over a period, teaching Pokémon new skills, assisting Pokémon evolution, and more fall within the services of a hatchery. However, the Mystery Hatchery House had even more responsibilities, like styling Pokémon, healing injuries, teaching trainers about Pokémon care, and so on. Since there were no other services related to Pokémon in this world yet, it all started with these Moo Moo milks. The time is near. When the eggs reach this frequency of glowing, they're about to hatch. Step back a bit. The first person the little ones see upon birth will become their closest family member. This first glance is crucial. Dak gestured for everyone to step back. These prominent figures of the sea didn't make any sly moves at this time and retreated openly. But Dak didn't have the time to pay attention to their behavior now. He was fully focused on the 7 Pokémon eggs. Bonclay and Darkrai stood behind Dak on either side. They knew the people behind them wouldn't make any dangerous moves, but it was just a precaution. This sea was not short of daredevils. Always some who would risk their lives for actions that could cost them dearly. It's coming. Dak's eyes were fixed on the eggs, his heartbeat unconsciously speeding up. The others were also intently watching the eggs, eagerly anticipating what kind of little ones would emerge. The first to change shape was a coffee-colored egg. EV. When this sound rang out, Dak already knew which Pokémon it was. The eyes of everyone else at that moment were filled with shock, because the birth of the Pokémon wasn't through breaking the egg, but direct transformation from an egg. Soon, a little creature with rabbit ears appeared before Dak, cautiously looking up with its big, dark eyes and making a soft sound. EV. Welcome to the world, EV. Dak excitedly reached out to pick up the little fur ball in front of him, carefully kissing it. A normal EV has a height of 0.3 meters, but this newly born EV was only about 0.15 meters, expected to grow gradually. EV, feeling the warmth of Dak's embrace. EV seemed to enjoy it, rubbing against Dak and even licking his chin with its little tongue. The other onlookers stretched their necks curiously to see the little creature in Dak's arms. It looked a bit like a fox and a bit like a rabbit, but not exactly either. However, it was very cute. Interestingly, it wasn't Gion or Tsuru who showed deep affection for Eevee, but Jozu, the diamond tough guy. Before everyone could get a good look, the other 6 eggs began to transform in succession. One by one, interesting little ones appeared before everyone. The egg belonging to Bon Clay hatched into a Smoochum. The little one clumsily toddled towards Bon Clay, who joyfully picked up Smoochum. Smoochum, being only about 0.25 meters tall, was easily lifted by Bon Clay's 2 hands. "Hello there, little one." Bon Clay looked at the pinkish little thing, feeling as if he had gained a daughter. Smoochum indeed looked quite like a little girl. Seeing Bon Clay so close, Smoochum stretched out its small hands, hugged Bon Clay's cheeks, and gave him a peck. This was Smoochum's way of expressing affection, a behavior it also shows towards other liked Pokemon. Newgate, watching Smoochum and Bon Clay's intimate interaction, began to feel envious, hoping to be as close to the little one as they were. Next, a gray egg hatched into a Rockruff. Aru, clearly a brave and reckless character. The little one hadn't even properly greeted Dak before running to bite and tug on Vista's trouser leg, showing a fierce demeanor, but was quickly picked up by Darkrai and brought back. Though a bit impolite, Vista looked on with admiration, preferring this bold, challenge-seeking type over the previous two more gentle Pokémon. A deep blue egg hatched into a cub one. Seeing this little one, Dak felt a slight panic, foreseeing a significant dent in his already tight budget. Cub one, graciously, looked around after emerging and then ran to Sengoku, opening its mouth and pointing at it with one hand, then rubbing its stomach with the other, attracted by the scent of food on Sengoku. Sengoku understood the little one's gesture. For some reason, Sengoku felt as if he was looking at his own pet goat at home, a tenderness appearing in his eyes. Then he took out a cookie stolen from Garp and fed it to Cub One. A reddish-gray egg hatched into a poniard. The little one appeared quite grown up from birth, quietly staying by Dak's side, flashing its arm blades at the others. Seeing this little one, Mihawk's eyes lit up, evidently recognizing a Pokémon adept at swordsmanship. An orange egg hatched into a Deden. Its small size made it almost invisible to a giant like Newgate, who had to squint to see the little creature clearly. Despite Deden's small stature, only about 0.1 m, its bravery was not small, climbing on a Gion, attracted by a pleasant scent she carried. Lastly, a snow-white egg hatched into a Vulpix. The white Vulpix, an Alolan ice-type Vulpix, licked its paws upon birth, showing its vanity from the start. Thus, all 7 Pokémon eggs hatched, representing Pokémon from 7 different regions. Unfortunately, no one there could share this insight with Dak. Only he recognized it. In a Chapter 31. Chapter 31 at this moment on the Moby Dick, a crowd gathered, watching the screen projected by the Den Mushy. Wow, it's true, there are so many types of Pokémon. That one that looks like a little wolf is really cool. Pop seems to really like that snowy white little fox. So cute. A group of tough guys revealed ant-like smiles as they watched the little ones with various personalities and appearances. The Whitebeard pirate style was indeed different from typical pirate crews, resembling a group of idle uncles and aunts when not engaging in battle. Back to the mystery hatchery house. Dak was using a towel to clean areas on EV that weren't covered with fur, like its paws and ears, to avoid discomfort from wet fur. Bon Clay, following Dak's example, tried to clean Smoochum's face, but it seemed to make the little one uncomfortable. Darkrai floated in mid-air holding Rockruff, who was too aggressive, always trying to struggle free to bite Newgate, Sengoku, and others. Pokémon can sense life forces from the outside world even while in their eggs, making the guest presences somewhat foreign to Rockruff. Cub One was still tugging at Sengoku's cloak for food, but Sengoku couldn't possibly carry a bunch of food with him everywhere. Poniard couldn't maintain its calm demeanor, being just a child. It cautiously approached Gion, poked her Compyra sword hanging at her waist, then ran behind Mihawk to touch his Yuru. In the pirate world, touching their weapons like that could cost someone their life. But for a newly born Pokémon like Poniard, there was no issue. Both Mihawk and Gion seemed quite interested in the little one. Deden stood on Gion's shoulder, rubbing against her cheek and sparking a bit of electricity, causing Gion to pause in surprise. Meanwhile, Vulpix had elegantly gone to the lakeside, using the water as a mirror to groom itself, ceaselessly licking its fur. Newgate and the others kept their attention on these unique little creatures. However, Dak knew the display wasn't at its best yet. It would be better if the little ones could show off their special abilities. Dak, what's the name of my child? Smoochum, a psychic and ice-type Pokémon. Hearing Bon Clay's question, an idea sparked in Dak's mind. Oh, Smoochum, suits you well. Bon Clay didn't react much, just nodding at the Pokémon in his arms. He had heard about Pokémon types from Dak, but hadn't asked for details. The other listeners, however, were hearing about types for the first time and found it intriguing. Dak, what are types? Sengoku, more interested in things directly related to Pokémon's combat capabilities, focused on their potential and strength. It's the key nature of a Pokémon's internal energy. For example, Smoochum being psychic and ice-type means that she'll show greater talent in learning and using skills of those types. With a slight smile, Dak stood up and signaled for everyone to follow. Come, let's demonstrate. Though Pokemon are fragile in their infancy with not much fighting power, some innate skills can still be released. Dak led everyone to the manufacturing room. He needed to determine what skills these little ones had mastered to instruct them properly, so a check was in order. If he called out a skill and the Pokemon didn't know it, that would be quite embarrassing. Entering the manufacturing room, Newgate and the others were momentarily stunned by the two large machines inside, looking advanced and impressive. Newgate and Mihawk, the pirates, might not care, but Sengoku and Tsuru couldn't help but speculate about the machine's uses. This is a Pokemon detection device, capable of revealing information about Pokemon. I plan to develop a portable version of this machine for customer sales. Dak was referring to something like a Pokédex, but that was still an idea. For now, the focus was on making money. Bon Clay put Smoochum inside. Okay, Bon Clay nodded and carefully placed Smoochum inside the glass chamber. Smoochum looked scared inside the chamber, gazing pitifully at Bon Clay. Don't worry, it'll be quick. I'm right here with you. Bon Clay hurriedly reassured, morphing into Smoochum's shape. Dak activated the detection device. Everyone curiously watched the large machine. Click. The chamber opened. That was less than 3 seconds? Dak was also startled. He remembered Darkray's test took nearly a minute. Bon Clay picked Smoochum from the chamber while Dak approached the electronic screen. Smoochum type, Ice/Psychic ability, oblivious height, 0.25 meters weight, 4.5 kilograms age, 1 day, infancy, skills, pound. Dak was dismayed by this skill list. These skills hardly showcased Pokemon specialties. Darkrai put Vulpix in the checking device. Without hesitation, Darkrai quickly picked up the vain little one and placed it inside the glass chamber. Vulpix was a bit upset because Darkray's handling messed up its fur, lightly biting Darkrai in protest, though Darkrai surely felt nothing. Again, 3 seconds. Vulpix Alola form, type, Ice ability, Snowcloak height, 0.3 meters weight, 5 kilograms age, 1 day, infancy, skills, powder snow, tail whip. This was it. Dak picked up Vulpix, which seemed calm due to Dak's familiar scent, and didn't make a fuss. Mr. Mihawk, would you like to witness the marvel of Pokemon? Dak glanced at Newgate and then at Sengoku before choosing Mihawk. Indeed, Mihawk grinned, eager to see. Hearing his response, Jozu, standing next to Newgate, seemed a bit down. He also wanted to get close to the adorable Vulpix. Vulpix used powder snow on him. Vulpix complied, blowing a stream of snowflakes at Mihawk. Under normal circumstances, Mihawk could have easily dodged, but being in the shop and considering the proximity, Mihawk had no intention of dodging. To truly experience the magic of Pokemon, he had to take it head-on. Yet, the skill Vulpix used truly surprised everyone, and when they looked back at Mihawk, already coated with a layer of frost resembling an ice cap, they were astounded. Such power was like having eaten a devil fruit. In a Chapter 32. Chapter 32, completely different abilities from what Darkrai displayed earlier. Jozu and Vista exchanged glances, both detecting the surprise in each other's eyes. While Sengoku, Thru, and Gion remained composed, their wide eyes clearly showed the extent of their shock, perhaps even more so than the Whitebeard pirates' crew members. After all, unlike Newgate and Mihawk, Sengoku and his group had never seen Darkrai in action, so they were utterly unprepared for the special abilities possessed by Pokemon. Dak, what is this? Tsuru couldn't help but inquire. Their view of Pokemon had changed now, showing a level of seriousness previously absent. These are skills. Each Pokemon can master many skills. Some are naturally acquired, some are inherited, and some are learned actively. Learning skills of their own type is faster, and they can master the most moves in that type. Like Vulpix here is an ice type, so it used an ice-type move, Powder Snow. Dak gently petted Vulpix's head before putting it back on the ground. Of course, Pokemon can also learn many other types of moves, though it's a bit more difficult. The little one lifted its head and elegantly stepped aside, sticking out its tongue to groom itself under everyone's gaze. This little one is electric type, right? Gion, hearing Dak's explanation, poked the Deden on her shoulder. When Deden had rubbed against her cheek earlier, she clearly felt an electric tingle, not strong but noticeable. Yes, Dak nodded. So, does that mean my Smoochum, being dual-typed, has better talent and can learn more skills? Bon Clay's eyes lit up, looking forward to Dak's answer. The others shared this curiosity. If Bon Clay's guess was correct, dual-type Pokemon would evidently be more sought after. Indeed, Smoochum had better potential due to its purple grade and seemed not to be the lazy type unwilling to grow stronger, but what's wrong? Bon Clay sensed something amiss from Dak's expression. While it's true that dual-type Pokemon may find it easier to master more of their inherent skills, it doesn't necessarily mean they're stronger. Types have counter-relationships. Dual-type Pokemon may have a wider range of offensive capabilities, but they also have more vulnerabilities unless they possess rare and advantageous type combinations like Dragon/Steel or Fairy/Steel. Dak pondered how detailed to explain to the guests, considering setting up a Pokémon Academy for systematic education in the future. For now, he briefly explained, it's about type matchups, a deep subject. For instance, as you may know, fire beats grass and ice, so fire moves would do more damage to grass/ice dual-type Pokemon. This explanation was straightforward, so Sengoku and others nodded, altering their view of dual-typed Pokemon. Newgate's group and Mihawk, perhaps less concerned about this, didn't expect their Pokemon to battle. But Sengoku and Tsuru had more to consider, thinking about organizing a special forces division based on different types. Realizing the complexity Dak mentioned, they grew contemplative. Grass beats water, electric beats water, etc. Even without Dak's explanation, combining real-world logic made it clear. What's so complicated about that? Dak, why do you say types are a deep subject? Sengoku couldn't suppress his curiosity and asked. Because there are 18 types. Dak's gaze lingered on Sengoku, revealing a cryptic smile. Sengoku was initially puzzled by the answer. 18 types were more than he expected, but so what? Soon, Dak clarified. These 18 types form 171 combinations. Understand? Dak grinned, not yet finished. And dual-type Pokemon have a primary and secondary type. Though this order doesn't affect combat matchups, it influences their physical form. If we consider different orders as distinct combinations, theoretically, there are 324 combinations, Mr. Sengoku. As Dak finished, even those like Gion, not keen on such complexities, felt overwhelmed. It felt as if their brains were about to grow. Even Sengoku, upon hearing this, felt dazed, struggling to grasp it fully. If you're interested, I'll offer courses for guided instruction in the future. For now, don't worry about it. You've hardly seen a few types of Pokemon. Dak interrupted Sengoku and the others' thoughts. They realized he had a point. Why overthink Pokemon interactions? He intended to use Pokemon to combat pirates. Surely, pirates didn't have types? Sengoku didn't know that while pirates indeed lacked types in the era to come, many would rely on Pokemon for significant endeavors, and those unaware of type dynamics would be at a disadvantage. Dak, are you selling this little one? Gion suddenly asked, pointing to the Bidoof on her shoulder. Hearing this, Deden panicked, jumping straight from Gion to Dak's head, clearly unwilling to leave with Gion. Sorry, but Pokemon and Pokemon eggs differ. Once born, Pokemon begin to develop their own will, so whether they choose to go with a customer is up to them. We don't force them. Dak picked Deden from his head, placing it on the ground. You're welcome to visit more often, play with Deden, and maybe it'll choose to go with you. If so, I won't stop it. Dak's approach earned Newgate's approval. To him, it was like raising a child. If another pirate crew fancied his son and wanted to take him on a quest for the One Piece, he'd first consider his son's wishes. If his son wanted to go, he, as a father, wouldn't stand in the way. End of chapter 33. Chapter 33. Ladies and gentlemen, the shop is a bit busy today, so we might have to close early. Please head back first. Dak believed he had made a sufficiently deep impression on the group, and thus began to usher the visitors out. Moreover, he was eager to complete the task at hand. Main quest, breeding lesson 4. Delivery objective. As a breeder, you must make all necessary preparations before the Pokemon hatch. Please follow the guidebook to successfully assist the Pokémon in hatching from their eggs. Reward: the shop's floor space will double in size. Sengoku and the others seem to have more to discuss, but given Newgate and Mihawk's presence, they refrained from elaborating and were the first to leave. The Whitebeard Pirates trio said their goodbyes, inviting Dak to visit any time. Mihawk, still standing there, locked eyes with Poniard as if sharing a moment of silent understanding before finally turning to leave. Now, let's get to work, Poniard. Dak and the little ones headed to the pond, using towels to gently clean their bodies. Poniard, being particularly calm and cooperative, made Dak's task easier, carefully moving to allow for a thorough clean, conscious of its sharp body and the potential danger to others. It was somewhat sad, considering these Pokémon couldn't engage in close physical contact with those they liked due to their bodily features. Bon Clay and Darkrai helped clean the others, with Vulpix being the only one reluctant to let anyone besides Dak touch its fur. The others, however, were quite compliant. After the visitors left, even Rockruff became docile, lying next to Dak's legs. They're all so adorable. Dak couldn't help but silently rejoice, his dream of owning a Pokémon now a reality, with as many as he wished for. The future of this world was destined to be an era of Pokémon. Pokémon is justice. Cub 1 was hungry again, tugging at Dak's clothes from behind. Despite its small size, Cubone's strength was surprising, nearly damaging Dak's clothes with its tugs. Here you go. Dak magically produced a bottle of Moo Moo milk for Cub 1, but knew it wouldn't be enough to satisfy the little Pokémon, so he gestured toward a nearby tree laden with fruit. The fruit, resembling bananas but with pink at the bottom and yellow on top, was known in the Pokémon world as a Nanab berry, though its effects differed greatly between worlds. In the Mystery Hatchery House, the berries provided balanced nutrition and flavor that Pokémon couldn't resist, making it an ideal food source for the young ones. With these berries, Dak no longer worried about feeding the Pokémon, though he planned to occasionally purchase other foods with his Pokecoins to provide variety. Main quest, Breeding Lesson 4, Delivery, completed reward. The shop's floor space doubles. Expand now? No, Dak decided against expanding the shop in the little one's presence to avoid frightening them, opting to wait until they were asleep. A new main quest was issued. Main quest, Breeding Lesson 5, Babysitting Objective. As the manager of a hatchery, you must learn how to manage a group of energetic and curious babies. Take them out to see the world and let the world see them, visiting at least 3 places while ensuring their safety. Reward, Pocket Token Upgrade. Introducing a savings function, allowing you to deposit and deduct currency directly from the token. This task seemed manageable, but the reward focused more on facilitating transactions by introducing convenient mobile payments. Hey, Dak! Bon Clay's voice called out from behind. Dak had a hunch about what was coming. He turned around to see the 9 eggs under the tree beginning to glow faintly. As expected, Sigh, we haven't even started causing a ruckus here, and there's already more on the way. Dak shook his head but chuckled. Well, it's a happy problem to have, haha. As night deepened, unaware of the outside darkness, Dak settled the little ones into the bedroom, with Darkrai watching over them. Smoochum, attached to Bon Clay, joined him in the staff quarters. Alone under the tree in the shop, Dak leaned against it, drifting off to sleep amidst the glowing eggs. The shop had already expanded. The originally 100 square meter shop floor was now 200 square meters, with the tree, warm lamp, and pond all enlarged accordingly. The tree had grown significantly, now 3 meters in diameter and 5 meters tall, making it impossible for the little ones to reach the Nanab berries without Dak or Darkray's help. The pond had also expanded to 5 meters in diameter, though it remained 2 meters deep. Without aquatic Pokémon or other life forms, it looked a bit lonely. The grass now sprouted small flowers, adding a subtle fragrance to the air, while the staff quarters, bedroom, and manufacturing room had all quietly grown to 45 square meters each. The Mystery Hatchery House now spanned 335 square meters, ready for its next phase of growth. End of Chapter 34. Chapter 34. When Dak woke up, the first thing he did was look around him. The 9 eggs flashing frequency was very fast now, but they had not yet hatched. Dak sighed in relief, then suddenly felt something heavy on his legs. Looking down, he saw that Evie and the others had somehow made their way outside and were snuggled up sleeping around him. Poniard, however, was awake, seemingly unfazed by the suddenly enlarged store, just quietly standing by the lake, looking at his reflection on the water surface. "Hey, Dak, the room suddenly got bigger. I don't know what happened." Bon Clay hadn't come out from the dormitory yet, but he started shouting. Then, opening the door and stepping outside, he was immediately stunned, his mouth agape, walking out dumbfounded at the suddenly transformed surroundings. "Don't be too surprised, Bon Clay. Our mystery hatchery house is going to spread across many worlds. The store can't stay this small forever." Dak looked at Bon Clay like that, and still explained a bit. After all, there would definitely be occurrences that would shake one's worldview in the future, and they couldn't always think about muddling through every time. "How did you do it?" "It's somewhat related to the development of our house. The birth of these little ones is a sign that our house is taking a big step forward, so the store also changed along with it." Dak didn't mention it was a system task. That explanation would be too complicated. This way of explaining it was simpler and not exactly wrong. "It's magical. Ever since you appeared, I felt the world starting to become strange to me." Bon Clay calmed his own little heart. "No, it's me who has made this world strange." Dak shook his head, correcting Bon Clay's words. "Dak." At this moment, Darkrai emerged from Dak's shadow. He almost didn't need to sleep, so he had been around all this time. "Yeah, Bon Clay, you and Darkrai prepare those things we prepared yesterday again. These little ones are about to be born." Dak stood up with a slight headache, feeling suddenly overwhelmed by the tasks at hand. The sudden increase in the number of Pokémon in the store made Dak acutely aware of his poverty. He wanted to buy some toys for the little ones, use Pokecoins to get some food for them from the marketplace, but he had no funds. How to make money? Dak pondered while Bon Clay and Darkrai were preparing things. Selling these little ones would definitely be the quickest way. It seemed like both the Marines and the Whitebeard pirates had this idea. Even Mihawk was interested in Poniard. But Dak was somewhat reluctant to part with them, and also not quite at ease. The Pokémon that had already hatched naturally weren't the same as when they were eggs. Dak liked the little ones clinging to him. It was a good feeling, and he quickly grew fond of them. When they were eggs, without any response, Dak didn't feel as affectionate. It was more about responsibility. More importantly, he had already said that after a Pokémon is born, only those who gain the Pokémon's approval can obtain the right to buy it. So, this method was passed on. If that didn't work, then selling goods was the next option. He could buy some goods from the Magic Marketplace and then sell them at a high price. For example, Moo Moo milk from before, whether it's the Whitebeard pirates, the Marines, or even Mihawk, they would buy it. Those few are not the ones who would worry about money. Although their Pokémon eggs had not hatched yet, and they were not in a hurry to buy Moo Moo milk. But calculating the time, those eggs would probably hatch within a week. They might come with belly 3 or 4 days later to buy in advance. By then, he could also make some money. Sigh, not being the head of the house, one does not know the expense of firewood, rice, oil, and salt. Dak didn't know how many times he had sighed about this. In just a short while, the sounds of Bon Clay and Darkrai preparing things had also woken up the Pokémon around them. Eevee, just waking up, burrowed into Dak's arms, curling into a ball, intending to continue sleeping. "Dak, you can't. Little brothers and sisters are about to be born. I still have to watch. Eevee, be good. Go sleep over there." Dak didn't mind holding this soft little ball, but he still had to deliver the newborns. Bon Clay and Darkrai wouldn't know how. It was about time he found an employee to teach about these matters. He couldn't always do everything himself. It would be best to find a girl. Girls are more meticulous. Eevee obediently walked to the side and lay down, but also stopped sleeping, his long ears perked up, watching intently. Smoochum seemed not to have been woken up by the noise, but was woken up by hunger. Upon waking up, it pulled Dak to help pick fruits. Dak told it to find Bon Clay or Darkrai for help. They could fly, making picking fruits easy. Rockruff acted as a bodyguard, circling around the eggs as if protecting them. Poniard remained by the lake, staring at his reflection on the water's surface, lost in thought. Deden was a skilled tree climber, easily climbing up a 5-meter-tall tree, holding a nanab berry to munch on, making Smoochum drool, hugging the tree trunk in desperation. Vulpix, upon waking up, started licking its fur, straightening out the fur that had been flattened while sleeping, truly a little girl who loves beauty. In no time, the 9 eggs began to deform one by one. 9 new Pokémon appeared in front of Dak and the others. Bon Clay and Darkrai had already been excitedly standing by. Only Dak was relatively calm watching this scene. The first to catch Dax, I was a fluffy big dog. A Growlithe, about 0.4 m tall. It was the little one that hatched from the purple quality egg. As soon as it came out of the egg, it ran around the grassland full of energy, even jumping over to knock Dak down and licking his face with its tongue. Okay. Dak's entire face was wet and uncomfortable, and he quickly pushed the little Growlithe away. He could almost predict that this little thing would be the most troublesome. Its vitality was too abundant. The remaining 8 were a lazy-looking Krabby, which stood still with its eyes closed upon arrival, not moving. An EV, unlike the previous shy and gentle one. This one was bold and confident, apparently a boy. A common Magikarp placed into the lake. A common Feebas placed into the lake. A dazed-looking Rowlet. A defiant-looking Scraggy, who seemed to challenge anyone. A somewhat odd Ditto. And the last, a Miltank. End of Chapter 35. Chapter 35, the arrival of these 9 little ones gave Dak a considerable surprise. Especially the last one, the Miltank. Miltank is a very gentle creature, not fond of fighting, and has a history of coexisting with humans even in ancient times. However, their bodies are strong, so they also possess significant combat power if needed. The most crucial point is that a mature Miltank can produce 20 liters of moo milk daily, and if not milked, it feels uncomfortable. Moreover, the taste of moo milk changes with the seasons, which is quite magical. A bottle of moo milk is 500 milliliters, meaning 40 bottles are produced a day, and at 50,000 belly per bottle, that amounts to an income of 2 million belly a day. My goodness, this isn't just a Miltank, it's a treasure trove. Looking at the little Miltank in front of him, only 0.7 m tall, Dak joyfully rubbed her little head. This Miltank's talent is only green, but that doesn't matter. Miltank itself does not like to fight, and Dak has no plans to sell her. Darkrai put the Magikarp and Feebas in the lake. Dak hurriedly had Darkrai transfer the 2 fish still flopping on the ground. The fish calmed down once back in the lake, sticking out their heads and blowing bubbles. Dak couldn't see anything special about the 2 Pokémon, but he wouldn't underestimate them. Everyone knows what stature the evolved forms of Magikarp and Feebas hold. Krabby is a lazy one, always sleeping in the same spot, not moving even when Deden stands on its head. Eevee found another Eevee and ran over to play, seemingly liking this somewhat shy sister. But the sister Eevee didn't seem to like this brother, shaking her tail, unwilling to interact with him, instead turning to play with her best friend, Vulpix. Rowlet is always a bit slow, standing on the ground for a long time before slowly flying up a tree to stare at the nanab fruit, taking a while before finally biting into one. Ditto has unconsciously used its innate ability to transform into a Frankie, scaring the real Frankie back several steps. Hey, Dak, this Pokemon, it has my ability. Bon Clay panicked, pointing at another Bon Clay in front of him. It was his first time experiencing what it's like to see another transform into oneself. However, Ditto's transformation into Bon Clay is slightly different. The fake Bon Clay has bean-like eyes. This shows Ditto's unfamiliarity with its powers. But over time, Ditto will gradually improve these flaws. Now, Smoochum has been scared by Ditto, sitting on the ground looking around before bursting into tears. Bon Clay also couldn't care about Ditto anymore, quickly squatting down to comfort Smoochum. There's also a particularly troublesome Pokemon, Scraggy. Hey, no fighting. Dak thought the energetic Growlithe would be the most troublesome, but he never expected one of the eggs to hatch a Scraggy. Scraggy is a rather troublesome Pokemon. Anyone who makes eye contact with it gets a headbutt out of nowhere. Just now, Rockruff curiously looked at it, and Scraggy immediately gave Rockruff a headbutt. If Rockruff had been beyond its baby phase, Scraggy headbutt wouldn't have been a big deal. But Rockruff, still a baby, felt the full brunt of the headbutt. Could Rockruff tolerate such insolence from Gummy, a sibling born just a day after itself? Of course not. Rockruff bit Scraggy's tail with its baby teeth. Slurp. Scraggy couldn't stand the pain, grabbed its pants, and ran around the house with Rockruff in tow. Dak chased after them, tripping several times over the Growlithe sticking to him. Growlithe, feeling no guilt, instead licked Dak all over. This little guy didn't know he did anything wrong. He's just a simple dog. Elsewhere, Cubone's stomach grumbled endlessly, like an insatiable abyss, clinging to Darkray's legs, insisting Darkray pick fruit for it. The entire mystery hatchery house was bustling with noise, everything in disarray, transforming the once tranquil shop into a lively and noisy scene. The rest of the day, Dak, Frankie, and Darkray, the three adults, never had a moment's peace. Sometimes Scraggy and Rockruff would start fighting again. Sometimes Munchlax got hungry. Sometimes Growlithe jumped into the lake to play with the two fish and nearly drowned. Sometimes Rollet mistook Miltank's udders for fruit and got slapped so hard by Miltank it couldn't get up for half a day. By evening, the three were worn out. But fortunately, after a whole day of tumult, the little ones were tired and quietly lay on the lawn waiting for their meal. Despite having just hatched, it seemed as if they had already found lifelong companions. Smoochum clung to Bon Clay, Munchlax to Darkray, and Rockruff to Krabby. Scraggy and Rockruff loved and fought. Magikarp and Feebaw lived harmoniously. Ditto and Rollet spaced out together. Sister Eevee and Alolan Vulpix were best friends, but Sister Eevee had an annoying brother, Eevee, always sticking to her. Growlithe constantly entangled Dak, frequently tripping him. But there was an exception. Pawniard. It often stood by the lake or mirror, gazing at its reflection, ignoring other Pokemon trying to communicate with it. Dak noticed this, but hasn't yet figured out the problem. Pawniard doesn't seem like one to open up easily. Kids, come and drink some Moo Moo milk, or Cub One will take your share. Dak prepared several bowls on the lawn, each filled with a bottle of Moo Moo milk, and had Bon Clay and Darkray pick a lot of Nanab fruits from the trees. It's not that Dak didn't want to prepare other food, but he was too busy all day. The key is he didn't even know what he was busy with. Time just slipped away. Tonight's dinner had to be simple, planning to make some poke blocks from berries tomorrow, then take the little ones out for a walk, stretch their legs, and complete some main tasks. But plans don't always work out, and 2 days passed in a blink. Dak was busy taking care of the children every day, with no time for anything else. This made him realize he couldn't go on like this, and needed to increase the staff at the Mystery Hatchery House soon, or he wouldn't have time for business anymore. End of chapter 36. Chapter 36, since he dared to venture out by himself, Dak naturally wouldn't head towards the Grand Line. His destination, or rather, the objective, was already crystal clear. The devil child Nico Robin, who is now 19 years old. Dak needed the abilities of the Hana Nomi. This was simply a divine technique for a Pokemon breeder. In the world of Pokemon, it's literally every breeder's ultimate dream. Now that Dak has officially started his career as a breeder, he deeply understood this, wishing he himself had 18 hands, one for each baby Pokemon. Dak had already considered the pros and cons of having Nico Robin as a clerk. The advantage, aside from the Hana Nomi ability mentioned before, the most important thing was that Dak knew this character well enough. To be honest, Nico Robin was not Dak's only target. Every member of the Straw Hat crew was. Because Dak knew these people would never betray the Mystery Hatchery House once they joined, but he also knew some people were destined not to join the Mystery Hatchery House. For example, Luffy, who wants to become the Pirate King. Frankie, who dreams of sailing the best ship he built around the world. Nami, who wishes to draw a map of the entire world. Sanji, who aims to find the All Blue. These people are bound by their dreams and goals, destined to set sail towards the new world on a single ship. But Robin was attainable. Her dream is to find the true Poneglyphs and restore the history of the Void Century. This and a significant part of it was to fulfill the wishes of her mother and the scholars of O'Hara. This goal, for the Mystery Hatchery House, was too simple. Not to mention, some Pokémon could allow Robin to go back 800 years to witness that history directly. Not to mention using Pokémon's power to help Robin search for the Poneglyphs, or even trading rare items with other pirate crews for information on Poneglyphs. Even without all these, with Dak's knowledge of the storyline, finding those Poneglyphs locations was not a challenge at all. Isn't this much easier than conquering the world with Luffy? Every day, staying in the hatchery to take care of children, cuddling the babies, and then just waiting for the Poneglyphs to be delivered. And, according to Dak's own understanding, aside from the Poneglyphs, Robin might have another dream, which is to meet comrades willing to sacrifice everything to protect her. This ties back to what Salsan told Robin. Now, for the disadvantages. This was clear: the world government, or perhaps even a level lower, the Marines. The world government, those bunch of no-goods, Dak didn't care about them at all, nor did he ever consider them worthy customers. The people of the world government and the majority of pirates are just like a bunch of rotten fish not worthy of Pokemon. The Pokemon in their hands would either be taken for biological research by their superiors or coveted by the celestial dragons as pets. The Marines were indeed a problem, but it was a small problem. If you don't say, and I don't say, who would know Nico Robin is with me? You wouldn't want to lose the power of Pokemon that can change the world over a world government's wanted criminal. Right, Sengoku-san? Dak was very confident he could persuade the people on the Marine side, especially now that Sengoku-san had witnessed the extraordinary power of Pokemon. Of course, this was under the premise that the person who came wasn't Sakazuki. That man is still a hothead, not realizing what fools the celestial dragons are. It's impossible to reason with him. Nico Robin entered the Grand Line around the year 1515 of the Sea Circle calendar, and she is currently in the West Blue. Dak also kept up with news about the West Blue thanks to this. Just 2 days ago, Dak saw a newspaper article about Robin appearing in Belmere. Bidemer. Dak stepped out of a bar at the corner of the street and set foot in this area again. Belmere is an island governed by the strongest country in the West Blue, where Robin was seen. Before coming here, Dak had already gathered some information. Although Belmere is powerful, it's also very chaotic because it's not a world government member state and doesn't enjoy the protection of the world government or the Marines. It became powerful solely through various underground illegal businesses and a powerful army of ability users. Yes, an army of ability users. Devil fruits are considered a once-in-a-decade rarity in the East Blue, but they are not so rare in the other seas, especially in the North Blue. The king of Belmere once bought a large number of devil fruits at an auction held by the Don Quixote family in the North Blue to cultivate strong warriors. That could guess. It's precisely because it's chaotic here, without marine presence, making it a good hiding place. Indeed, it sounds like a place where Robin would stay. But now, there's a perplexing question. How to find Robin? The moment the news was broadcast, the Marines must have already surrounded Belmere. Marines could be seen everywhere on the streets, and it's unlikely Robin could have left in such a short time. But where's she hiding now? Dak wandered through the bustling streets of Belmere, feeling somewhat powerless in this situation. If there were any ghost-type Pokemon, perhaps their ability to phase through walls could expedite the search, but unfortunately, there were none. Suddenly, Dak had an idea. Robin might be watching the Marines within Belmere, so he just needed to appear where the Marines were, essentially stepping into Robin's line of sight. At that moment, Dak grinned, praising his own cleverness, and then recalled, I remember it was Deluxe? It seems right. So, the Marines patrolling within Belmere suddenly found that a handsome young man frequently appeared beside them, emitting a strange laugh. Derechichichi. Dak spent the entire day with his peculiar laugh, almost driving himself crazy. From leaving the Mystery Hatchery House in the morning to the sunset in the evening, Dak surrounded the Marines with his unique laugh. The Marines had tried more than once or twice to shoo him away, but he would leave for a while only to return to another group of Marines and continue his antics. However, until the night deepened, Dak still couldn't find any clues about Robin. He He began to suspect whether Robin had already left. As for the possibility that Robin didn't recognize this laughter, it's utterly impossible. Even if Robin were to forget those historical texts, she couldn't possibly forget the bizarre laugh of Derekikichi. Sigh, did I fail? Dak was somewhat disheartened, having left the mystery hatchery house full of confidence only to consider returning in low spirits. However, as he reached for a door at the roadside, a pair of arms suddenly grew from his shoulders. Dak's face lit up with joy. Click. Huh? You're starting with physical moves? Unfortunately, before he could even speak, Robin decisively used her Hana Nomi abilities to twist his neck, causing Dak to faint on the spot. Her technique was proficient, ensuring Dak wasn't seriously harmed, preventing the story from ending right there. End of Chapter 37. Chapter 37. In a dark room where one couldn't see their own hand in front of their face. What? Dak groggily opened his eyes, taking a few seconds to adjust to the darkness before he could make out a few details. He didn't know where he was, but he could see his silhouette sitting on a barrel in front of him. Awake, a slightly commanding voice echoed. Dak blinked, then realized that this woman must be Robin. The reason he didn't recognize her immediately was partly because his mind was foggy, and also because Robin's voice now differed significantly from how it sounded 9 years later. 9 years later, her voice was commanding too, but it seemed deeper, rougher, likely a result of the events she had experienced during those years. Especially during her time in Alabasta. Living in a sandy environment, it was impossible for her throat not to undergo some changes. Nico, Robin, you were looking for me after all. I've been watching you all day. I didn't expect the Marines to tolerate you for so long. Robin's tone carried a hint of disbelief, clearly shocked by Dak's method of continuously laughing around the Marines. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't have been able to find you. Dak grinned, not blaming Robin for the rough treatment. Given Robin's current situation and everything she had gone through up to now, it was already good that she hadn't killed him outright. Plus, earning Robin's trust might take some time. What's your relationship with Saul? Robin didn't seem to care much about why Dak was looking for her. She was more concerned about Dak's relationship with Saul, needing to know this before deciding whether to continue talking to Dak. Dak furrowed his brows, considering what reason he could fabricate to gain her trust. You better tell the truth. Robin's voice rang in Dak's ear as she had moved in front of him, pressing a dagger against his neck. However, these actions posed no threat to Dak. At this moment, Dak could easily subdue Robin with just his Conqueror's Haki, and even without it, the defense provided by his armament Haki was likely enough to withstand the dagger's edge. Well, even if I told you, you wouldn't understand much anyway. Dak shook his head, choosing his words carefully before saying, Robin, I've seen your past. Was this a lie? Of course not. Dak had not only seen Robin's past, but also her future. Of course, that was assuming everything remained unchanged. Now, Robin's future was naturally different. What did you say? Robin tightened her grip on the dagger, even bringing it closer to Dak's neck. Dak's words had startled her greatly. Anyone would be shocked to hear someone else claim to have seen their past. Dak could clearly feel the sharpness and coldness of the blade, but remained unfazed. Are you a devil fruit user? Robin furrowed her brows, then thought of the possibility of devil fruit powers. I'm not. Dak shook his head. Then on what basis do you say that? Robin clearly didn't believe him. If it had been just after her escape from O'Hara, she might have been easily deceived, but not anymore. She had reason to suspect Dak was just trying to trick her, perhaps to hand her over to the Marines. Listen, Robin, the sea is vast and boundless. One day, comrades who will protect you will appear. Being born into this world, you're not destined to be alone forever. Run, Robin, and remember to laugh like I taught you. Derekikichi. Dak lifted his eyes to look at Robin, who was just inches away, and said this somewhat distantly. This character was also one of his favorites, though he liked Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji more, of course. But after coming to this world, that fondness had faded a bit, even if seeing Robin only made him a little startled. Robin, hearing Dak speak like this, was suddenly taken back 11 years. It was Saul who had said these words to her when Akiji froze his lower half. That scene was still deeply etched in her mind. Only two people knew this phrase, her and Saul, and possibly Akiji. It was impossible for anyone else to know. So do you believe me now? Dak looked at Robin, who slowly moved the dagger away, and grinned. What else do you know? Robin looked at Dak with a strange gaze. It was normal, as Dak might be the only person in this world, aside from Akiji, who knew her past. Used to disguising herself, Robin felt uncomfortable with someone like Dak suddenly appearing before her. A lot. It even includes things you don't know. Dak tried to move, only to realize his hands and feet were still bound by Robin. Can you untie me? It's uncomfortable. I won't hurt you. I specifically came to take you away. Take me away? To where? Robin's eyes showed a hint of wariness. She wasn't going to trust someone who appeared out of nowhere, even if this person knew a lot. But what of it? In this vast sea, isn't betrayal common? To my store, or you could say my home. Don't worry, you'll be absolutely safe there. Even Fleet Admiral Sengoku would have to behave himself. These words might seem normal to Dak, but to Robin, it sounded like Dak was either crazy or boasting. There's no place absolutely safe in this sea. And who takes a girl home the first time they meet without having spoken a few words? Is this person a thug? Robin had reason to suspect Dak was a pervert coveting her beauty, a type not uncommon. Many bandits, mobsters, and pirates coveted her beauty, wanting to possess her. She had often used this to pit these men against each other, becoming a sort of pirate's Diao-chan. I can't possibly go, you dash. What if I say I have news about Saul? Would you still not want to go? Dak didn't wait for Robin to finish, but interrupted her. What do you mean? Robin, hearing what Dak said, was taken aback, then looked at him anxiously. Is Saul still alive? Come home with me, and I'll tell you. Dak's smile was wicked, at least in Robin's eyes. It was like that of a creepy otaku uncle luring a young girl. When it comes to recruiting clerks, Dak is quite unreasonable, just like with Bon Clay, simply knocking them out and taking them away. Robin was already receiving much better treatment than Bon Clay. If Robin's role in the original story wasn't so significant, her situation wouldn't be much better than his. In a Chapter 38, now tell me, or I'll kill you. Robin furrowed her brows, showing clear resistance and caution as she placed the dagger back against Dak's neck. She couldn't possibly follow a stranger to his place, no matter what he said. She had been deceived by this trick too many times before. Really, I'm trying to have a proper conversation with you, but you just won't listen. Dak shook his head with a sigh of resignation, then used armament hockey to harden his neck, planning to show off a bit and let Robin face reality. A sneak attack might work on him, but could he really lose to Robin in a direct confrontation? Suddenly, the door to the dark room was kicked open. Light poured in from outside. Only then could Dak see clearly where he was. It seemed like a warehouse, filled with food supplies and a corner stacked with somewhat pitiful treasures. And looking outside through the door, he saw a swaying sky. Swaying? Dak was startled, realizing he was on a ship. Pirates! Only then did Dak focus on the group that had just barged in. Their ferocious and sneaky looks made it clear they were no good. Undoubtedly, this was a pirate ship. Dak's mind raced, quickly understanding the situation. Robin had somehow managed to sneak onto this pirate ship, planning to use it to escape from Belmere and then from the Marines. But Dak was impressed that not only had Robin managed to get on board herself, but she had also dragged him along. That was quite something. Hey hi, isn't this Nico Robin with a bounty of 79 million belly? The leader of the group wore a large captain's hat, seemingly eager to announce his role as the captain of this pirate vessel, armed with a large sword in his left hand and a pistol in his right. He was followed by a bunch of pirates with vile smiles on their faces. Dak glanced at Robin, then his expression turned strange. Although Dak didn't know which pirate group this man belonged to, did he really think it wise to act so boldly in front of Robin? With the power of the Hana no Mi. In a place like the Four Seas where hockey is not widely mastered, killing people would be as easy as slicing vegetables, right? In the West Blue, there definitely were people not afraid of Robin, such as the famous bounty hunter Daz Bones, later known as Mr. One, the user of the Dice fruit. This fruit was indeed a natural counter to Robin, with the ability to turn one's body into blades, leaving the Hana no me nowhere to strike. But this guy? Dak took a closer look and felt this man didn't seem like a devil fruit user. A small-time pirate with a bounty of 12 million dares to come after me? Yar days. It seems money really can make people lose themselves. Robin calmly put down her dagger and turned around to shield Dak with her body. Dak couldn't help but secretly smile at this gesture, thinking that Robin must still be very interested in learning about Saul. It must have been just a scare tactic before. Robin wouldn't kill him before he revealed information about Saul. Your devil fruit power is indeed terrifying, but as long as you can eliminate us all in an instant, you're going to be in big trouble. The pirate captain, with a bounty of 12 million, seemed not at all worried, raising his hand as dozens of his men crowded in, aiming their firearms at Robin. This man was quite confident, but he wasn't wrong. If Robin couldn't eliminate these dozens of people instantly, any single shot fired could put her in danger. Of course, Dak would be in danger too. But Dak wasn't worried. Instead, he was curious to see how Robin planned to handle the situation. Do you have the ability to deal with this? To Dak's surprise, Robin seemed to be looking to him for a solution. But this had always been Robin's survival rule, using others to deal with her enemies. And in most cases, she had come this far by doing so. I do. Dak revealed a subtle smile, his gaze towards Robin clearly asking for something in return. I'll go home with you. Robin didn't beat around the bush and spoke directly. The situation no longer allowed for delays. Moreover, if Dak was willing to act on her behalf, saving her, it meant he still had use for her. Following him to his place likely wouldn't cost her life. It would just mean serving a new boss. This was her experience all along. Though it was experience she wished she didn't have. Okay. Dak, hearing the answer he wanted, nodded without hesitation and then signaled Robin to untie the ropes binding his hands and feet. He planned to use Conqueror's Haki to deal with these people. Whether the ropes broke or not didn't matter. He just wanted to see if Robin, the cunning woman, would try any tricks. He had to coax her into untying him first. Robin, unaware of all this, carefully used a dagger to cut the ropes around Dak's wrists. Cutting the ropes around his ankles was trickier with so many eyes on them. Robin dared not use her Hana no me powers openly, as her ability required a specific starting gesture, crossing her arms in front of her chest. She believed any slight movement would prompt these men to shoot and kill her. Hey, what are you doing? The pirate captain seemed interested in Robin's body, his eyes revealing a wicked lust. If he was here just for Robin's bounty, he could have just killed her right then, as the world government didn't care if the bounty heads were dead or alive. This is bad. Just as Robin finished cutting the ropes on Dak's wrists, her actions seemed to be noticed. She panicked, throwing away the dagger, ready to use her devil fruit powers for a desperate attempt. Really no choice here. Dak's voice rang in her ears. The next moment, she felt as if the small warehouse turned an eerie crimson red. Very bizarre. But something even more bizarre happened immediately after. The group of men in front of them, one by one, started to fall, their eyes rolling back as if they hadn't even realized what was happening. Robin's eyes widened in shock, her mouth slightly agape. Where had she seen such a scene before? Racking her brain, she couldn't be sure. She turned around to see Dak had already cut the ropes around his own ankles with the dagger from the floor. At this moment, Robin didn't dare make any sudden movements. The fate of those men on the floor was clear for her to see, whether they were dead or alive. She didn't want to end up like them, especially since the man in front of her seemed to have no intention of killing her for the time being. What was that just now? Robin asked, also testing Dak's mood at the moment. Conqueror's Haki. Dak didn't mind telling Robin about it, thinking she might have heard about Conqueror's Haki before. This ability wasn't a secret in the vast sea. Even in the Four Seas, there were some legends about it. As Dak expected, Robin had indeed heard of it, but the fact that she knew what Conqueror's Haki was only made her more astonished by it. Her mind couldn't help but harbor doubts. Who exactly was this man? End of Chapter 39. Chapter 39, according to what Robin had heard from others. Conqueror's Haki is extremely rare, found in only one in millions, and anyone who possesses it will eventually gather in the most dangerous seas, the New World. This power cannot be cultivated. It is innate, growing with a person's spirit. If one's spirit wanes, they might even lose their conqueror's haki. But without a doubt, anyone with conqueror's haki has the makings of a monarch. Reflecting on her memories, Robin re-evaluated the young man before her, who appeared only a year or two older than herself. Where's the aura of a monarch? She was unaware that Dak's conqueror's haki was artificially bestowed by a system. Presently, Dak didn't look like someone with the potential of a conqueror. Though I realize you're full of questions, this place isn't exactly safe. This experience has cast a shadow over my view of the outside world. Let's head back. Dak rubbed his neck, shrugged one shoulder, then turned back to Robin and headed toward the warehouse door. Robin silently watched him. Where are you going? We're at sea. Let's go, didn't you promise? Dak half-turned, looking at Robin. What? To come home with me. Dak closed the warehouse door, then reopened it, pointing inside. Just as Robin was about to speak, the scenery behind the door changed. Wasn't it a sunlit deck before, but when Dak opened the door, it transformed into a dark curtain? What kind of ability is this? Come on, no backing out now. Dak, thinking Robin was hesitating, quickly walked up, grabbing her arm, and led her through the door. Robin looked up at Dak's back. Though it had been long since she was last touched by a man, Robin's gaze did not waver with this contact. Her past experiences didn't allow her to react like a young girl to such physical interactions. Robin followed Dak through that door, stepping into her new world. Mystery Hatchery House. I'm back. Upon entering, Dak shouted. It was 10 in the morning, and everyone should be awake by now. Woof, slurp, Gabby, Ibe, a crowd of little creatures from all around swarmed Dak, pinning him to the ground in a flurry of affection. Each Pokémon has its own way of expressing love. Growlithe is an affectionate licker. Scraggy uses headbutts. Cub1 stuffs a berry straight into Dak's mouth, and Eevee gently rubs his chin with its ears. All right, enough. Dak struggled on the ground like a floundering fish, finally escaping the enthusiastic welcome of the little ones. Once upright, he saw the exhausted faces of Bon Clay and Darkrai. Hee, sorry for the trouble, but I didn't disappoint, did I? Tada, guess who's here? Dak, feeling slightly apologetic, stepped aside to reveal Robin. Robin was baffled. Where's this? What are these little ones on the ground? Why can't I use my devil fruit powers? Robin's mind became a whirlwind of confusion, bordering on pain from the rapid thoughts, feeling slightly overloaded. Yo, isn't this the demon child? Dak, you've brought back quite the person. Bon Clay clearly recognized Robin from her bounty poster, but he also felt a headache brewing. Bon Clay, like Robin, is a thinker, a calm strategist. Upon seeing Robin, he knew their mystery hatchery house might be against the world government. Bon Clay, don't call Robin that. Dak pretended to be annoyed with Bon Clay. Robin surely wouldn't like Demon Child as a nickname. All right, my bad. Welcome aboard, Robin. Bon Clay, a staff member at the mystery hatchery house. We're colleagues now. Nice to meet you. Bon Clay quickly apologized, welcoming Robin warmly. He was genuinely pleased. The shop was already swamped. An extra pair of hands was definitely welcome, especially since Smoochum seemed to get jealous easily. As for the world government, that's for Dak to worry about. Though Bon Clay felt a bit arrogant. Honestly, after joining the mystery hatchery house and witnessing top figures of the sea inside the shop, he'd begun to disregard the world government. As long as they remained in the shop, they were invincible at the mystery hatchery house. Dak looked at Robin, who was still in a daze. Without Dak's explanation, Robin might never understand. Hearing Dak's voice, Robin instinctively looked up at him, wanted to say something, but unsure where to start. Questions abounded, but at least it seemed safe now, no longer hunted at sea. Hiya, don't worry, I'll explain everything slowly. Dak patted Robin's shoulder, about to begin, when he suddenly noticed something alarming. Hey, Scraggy Rockruff, stop it. Growlithe, release Magikarp. It can't breathe. Eevee, you little rascal. What are you doing? That's your sister. Don't cling to my leg. Have Darkrai, fetch you some berries." As Robin was about to listen intently to Dak's forthcoming revelations, she saw Dak dive into the group of adorable critters, pulling here, tugging there, and occasionally shaking his leg to dislodge the plump charm to the ground. This situation only eased slightly during mealtime. While ensuring the little ones ate properly, Dak recounted the mystery hatchery house to Robin. Robin's expression transitioned from bewilderment to shock, then numbness, and finally acceptance. If resistance was futile, better to embrace it. Though this new job was unusual, it seemed quite pleasant. Robin's gaze softened as she watched the little ones drink their milk, her face warming slightly. "So, Robin, will you join the Mystery Hatchery House? MHM. Then from now on, this is also your home. Congratulations to the host for acquiring a new staff member, female. Reward: female staff dormitory, 1,000 magical coins. Note: staff member strengths are not suppressed in the Mystery Hatchery House. To obtain Pokémon, staff only need the Pokémon and the store manager's approval." End of Chapter 40. Chapter 40 inside the Mystery Hatchery House. Robin, following Dak's instructions, chopped some fruits and placed them into a device known as the berry blender. With Robin's curious gaze, the berry blender produced 3 or 4 crystal-clear cubic jellies. These were known as Poke Blocks, specially made for those little ones called Pokémon outside. Such a tiny cube was enough to satisfy a Togedemaru's meal. Robin spent about 15 minutes in the workshop creating Poke Blocks, then distributed them into individual bowls for each Pokémon. Afterward, using the power of the flower fruit, she transported all the bowls at once to the outside dining area. "Everyone, it's time for lunch," Robin announced from the workshop's entrance. Many little ones eagerly headed towards their food bowls. However, a few remained stationary. "Krabby, stop sleeping, it's time to eat." "Roulette, did you sneak some Nanab again? Not hungry now, huh?" "Scraggy, Rockruff, stop fighting. Eat first, then you can continue." Robin skillfully coaxed those Pokémon who were less cooperative. This was Robin's 3rd day at the Mystery Hatchery House, and she had quickly adapted to her new role. How to put it? This job was genuinely wonderful. No need to follow someone's orders to gather intelligence or engage in dangerous plots. Although taking care of these little ones was indeed energy-consuming, Robin found joy in it. This was a life she had imagined countless times before, and now that it was real, she almost couldn't believe it, fearing this life might suddenly end. In Robin's view, Dak and the others were willing to take her in because they had not yet been troubled by the world government and the Navy. She knew that once the world government and the Navy started causing trouble, they might not want her anymore. Robin knew this day would inevitably come, so she treasured this life immensely. She never fantasized about Dak standing up to the Navy or the world government for her sake. Once, she might have trusted others like that, but she was no longer that naive. Mew, the sound by her leg and the soft touch on her calf brought Robin back to reality, and she looked down. Miltank. Robin had already memorized the names of these kids. "What's up?" Robin squatted down, lifted her hand, and gently stroked Miltank's round belly, the soft touch making her reluctant to let go. Mew. Miltank was holding a can of Moo Moo milk, handing it to Robin. "Do you want me to open it for you?" Robin took it, then used her hand to remove the cork from the glass bottle, handing it back to Miltank. "Mew Mew." Miltank shook its head, pushing the glass bottle. This time, Robin understood she was being invited to drink. Without hesitation, Robin took a sip, then passed it back to Miltank. Sweet, very tasty. Mew. Encouraged, Miltank began drinking from the bottle eagerly. It, too, wanted to produce such delicious Moo Moo milk. Watching the adorable little pink cow in front of her, Robin couldn't help but smile. Regardless of how dark human hearts might be, these little ones were always so pure. If possible, she really wanted to stay here forever. Robin looked up at the Pokémon quietly eating their lunch on the lawn, genuinely fond of these kids. "Yo, good morning, Robin." Dak's voice came from the side. He emerged from his bedroom, rubbing his eyes sleepily. These past 3 days, he had been teaching Robin about various aspects of the shop. Primarily, it was about caring for the Pokémon, understanding the personalities and habits of various Pokémon in the shop. He assigned Robin the task of caring for the newly born Pokémon babies, a task usually requiring several people. However, Robin's flower fruit abilities made it much easier. As for dealing with customers and handling transactions, that responsibility was given to Bon Clay. Given Robin's sensitive status, having her interact with the Navy would be difficult for both parties. It's already noon, manager. Robin glanced at the clock, sighing. The manager was quite lazy. This was something Robin had observed over these 3 days. If there was something commendable about the manager, he knew a lot about Pokémon and was very caring and gentle with them. That was about it. What matters is, today we are expecting 2 very important guests who will bring in money. Dax stretched his body, then looked at the little ones on the lawn, nodding in satisfaction. Trust Robin to handle it well, he thought, giving himself a mental pat on the back. Robin, with her flower fruit abilities, could manage things that would normally require 3 people, keeping the little ones well behaved. As for why there were 2 guests, it was because the Whitebeard pirates had already sent Thatch over, interested in Moo Moo milk for research, purchasing 100 bottles with 5 million belly early on. Maybe there was a mistake in the numbers. I don't know if it's 500 million or 5 million. This 5 million belly had already been converted into 500 magical coins for the system. The other 2 guests were expected from the Navy and Mihawk. Of course, that elderly gentleman didn't have the funds to purchase Moo Moo milk. No matter, Moo Moo milk wasn't essential unless aimed towards combat development. Pokemon are not fragile beings that must grow with a silver spoon. Guests. Robin looked up at Dak. It had been 3 days since she arrived, and it wasn't that no one had entered the shop, but it seemed all were intimidated by the shop's interior, turning around and fleeing before even giving Bon Clay a chance to speak. Only one dignified lady seemed unfazed upon entering the shop, actually interested in purchasing Pokemon. However, Dak had refused her midway through the negotiation. Robin was puzzled, asking Dak why, who explained no Pokemon in the shop wanted to leave with the lady, hence she wasn't qualified to buy any Pokemon. This made Robin more cautious. Doing business at the mystery Hatchery House wasn't as simple as anyone just walking in. Though it wasn't her area of work, she learned subconsciously. She wanted to make herself more valuable, to reduce the chances of being abandoned. Yep, not sure who will come. Probably just 2 errand runners. Dak frowned, thinking, Mihawk would definitely come himself, but the Navy? Surely Sengoku wouldn't personally visit again, right? Oh, Robin nodded, not overthinking it, and turned her attention back to the Pokemon. Do you want to look at the Pokédex? Seeing Robin looking bored, Dak offered. What's that? A book? Robin's eyes lit up. She was always interested in reading. Even if it was the dullest romance novel, she could find enjoyment in it. Yes, sort of. It contains information on over 900 Pokemon. If new ones are born, you can immediately provide proper care. Interested? Yes. End of chapter 41. Chapter 41. I've never seen such a stingy boss before. Robin held a thick, colorful book in her hands, looking at Dak with a somewhat resentful gaze as he left with her 10,000 belly. She thought Dak was going to let her look at the Pokédex for free, but he actually charged her 10,000 belly for it. Take a good look. I'll quiz you in an hour. Dak waved his hand and stopped paying attention to Robin. A Pokemon Pokédex costs 1 magical coin, which is equivalent to 10,000 belly. It's not that Dak couldn't spare the 1 magical coin. It's just that spending it would make his balance uneven, which bothered him. So, he charged Robin 10,000 belly. Robin, wanting to avoid seeing Dak, lowered her head and looked at the colorful Pokédex in her hands, her eyes lighting up as she turned to the first page. Bulbasaur. About an hour later, Dak came back from a nap and saw Robin still enthusiastically poring over the Pokemon Pokédex, shaking his head. Then he turned to look at the Pokemon on the lawn, all napping quietly. What have you reached? I've reached the 18th Pokemon, Pidgeot, Robin replied without lifting her head, still focusing on the page about Pidgeot. So slow. Dak pursed his lips, mockingly proud. I've only looked through 18 pages in an hour. Time for a question. Ask away. Robin revealed a confident smile, closed the Pokédex, and looked at Dak. What's Bulbasaur's ability? Overgrow, and its hidden ability is chlorophyll. By the way, what is an ability? Is it something like a habit? Robin quickly answered Dak's question and then asked Dak about abilities. That's related to Pokemon battling. You don't need to worry about it now. Your answer is good. I'll increase the difficulty. Dak shook his head, believing the knowledge was still too advanced for Robin. When Robin becomes interested in Pokemon battles, he'll share more about it with her. Okay, how high can Charizard fly? 1,400 meters. Not bad. It seems you were really paying attention. Dak nodded, not surprised that Robin, who loves to read, would remember these details. Can't you ask something more informative? Dak was baffled by Robin's challenge. Damn, I must show my true level as the world's top Pokemon professor. I'll ask you, what's the difference in battle power between Mega Charizard X and Mega Charizard Y? Dak closed the Pokédex, raising the difficulty. The Pokédex only provides a superficial explanation of the difference between Mega Charizard X and Y, leaving specific knowledge as a set of data for the viewer to analyze themselves. Mega Charizard X has higher attack and defense, and its flying type is shifted to Dragon type. Although I don't fully understand the concept of types, it's definitely a significant change. Mega Charizard Y has higher special attack and special defense. Although there seems to be no difference in speed, Y's flying ability seems to have improved, likely making it more agile. If you could explain these abilities and skills to me, I might understand more. Robin rattled off a long explanation, leaving Dak speechless. Her analysis might not delve deep into Pokemon battling, but for someone who has only seen Pokemon in a Pokédex, her insights were impressive. Dak believed that if Robin knew more about Pokemon, she could come up with even more insights. But that didn't stop him from saying, "Are you studying for a professor's degree?" "What do you mean?" Robin frowned, not understanding Dak's comment, only seeing surprise in his eyes. Another way to say it, do you want to be a Pokemon professor? Is that a profession? Robin asked curiously. She liked the sound of being called a professor, as it implied deep knowledge, something highly respected in O'Hara. Yes, in the world where Pokemon originate, there are many Pokemon-related professions. The most common are trainers, coordinators, and breeders, but the most prestigious and knowledgeable is the Pokemon professor, a rare and valuable asset in that world. Dak, recognizing Robin's interest in knowledge, didn't mind sharing more with her. So, you are a breeder, since our shop is called the Mystery Hatchery House. Dak stated matter-of-factly. However, coordinators and breeders are essentially types of trainers, with their full titles being coordinator trainer and breeder trainer. And Pokemon professors are considered another type. These professions are like advanced trainer careers. One must have been a trainer to advance into these other roles. Dak didn't wait for Robin to ask more. Instead, he patiently explained these professions to her. Meanwhile, Bon Clay walked out of the bedroom with Smoochum, sitting by and listening to Dak. Dak usually wouldn't talk about these topics. "I want to become a Pokemon professor," Robin said softly, her eyes showing genuine interest, though the goal seemed distant, not because of the difficulty, but because she knew she couldn't stay in the shop forever. Robin, slightly disheartened, put down the Pokédex. "Oh, Smoochum seems really interested in performing. Bon Clay, want to become a coordinator?" Dak didn't notice Robin's expression, but was intrigued by Smoochum's excitement. Perform? I'm not really good at that." Bon Clay's words made Dak laugh. Funky was no longer the flamboyant performer he once was, now being Ben Sam instead. "Jewel." Smoochum hugged Bon Clay's face and started to act spoiled. All right, I'll try." Funky scratched his head, embarrassed, feeling that coordinating was more suited for girls. To him, having a man perform with Pokemon was a bit hard to accept. Dak, unaware of Bon Clay's thoughts, might have brought Michael Ash over to lecture him otherwise. Click. At that moment, the shop door opened. Dak's anticipated customer came in with money. "Welcome, Mr. Kazan." End of Chapter 42. Chapter 42. Dak looked at the person sent by the Navy to deliver money, his expression turning somewhat strange. Could it be that everything Rayleigh said was true? Perhaps there's no such thing as coincidence in this world, only inevitability, or in other words, fate? Otherwise, why would Kazan, who has some history with Robin, arrive just as she joined the Mystery Hatchery House? Perfect timing. Dak muttered, a thought forming in his mind. He hadn't yet told Robin about the matter concerning Saul. "Hey, Robin, an old acquaintance of yours is here." Dak turned and called out to Robin, who was lost in thought behind him. Kazan, who had just walked in, heard his name, and the sleepiness on his face dissipated significantly, revealing a slightly surprised expression. His gaze moved past Dak to meet Robin's, who had instinctively looked up. For a moment, intense emotions flared in both their eyes. Kazan's eyes were mostly filled with surprise, but there was also a complex mix of emotions. Robin's eyes, however, held a strong fear. Dak could even see her trembling slightly, but this fear seemed to be not solely directed at Kazan. Robin put down the Pokédex in her hands, stood up with her head down, and walked towards the door under Dak's confused gaze. She had anticipated this day would come, just not so soon. She didn't want to think that Dak had called Kazan to capture her, but wasn't that the reality in front of her? No. Where are you going, Robin? It's very rude to leave like this. I never taught you to treat guests this way. Dak wasn't planning to enact a scene like that anime. He reached out, grabbed Robin, and caused her to stumble. Robin looked up at Dak, her eyes seemingly holding a glimmer of hope. Dak didn't understand. Moo. At this moment, Miltank woke up, hugged Robin's leg, and looked up at her curiously. Miltank was still holding a Pokemon cube that Robin had made for her by embezzling public funds. Miltank was very fond of Robin and was likely to become her close companion. Manager, you're not going to drive me away? Robin bent down to pet Miltank's ear before asking. Of course not. Dak finally understood what Robin was worried about. She was afraid that faced with a formidable enemy's pressure, he would abandon her. Dak hadn't expected Robin to have such thoughts after feeling the oppressive force of the Mystery Hatchery House. With that kind of force, anyone coming to cause trouble would be signing their death warrant. As for the world government and the celestial dragons, those not worthy of being Pokemon partners, Dak wouldn't care about their opinions. Dak had already automatically blacklisted those sorts. Yes, that almost inconsequential blacklist. Blacklist, celestial dragons, world government. This means that personnel from the celestial dragons and the world government will never enter the Mystery Hatchery House. It's not just that they can't find the door. Even if they did, they would be repelled. This manager, Nico Robin, is a criminal with a bounty of 79 million belly. Are you sure you want to shelter her? This will make things very difficult for me. At this moment, Kazan spoke up, massaging his black curls and seemingly a bit troubled. Despite feeling very weak, he still spoke his mind. However, how could Dak not know Kazan's attitude towards Robin? Look, Kazan, not even Sakazuki coming here would take away my staff. If he dares to come, I dare to kick his butt hard. Even if Sengoku learns about this, he won't turn against me. Dak waved his hand, speaking lightly of something quite significant. Both Kazan and Robin widened their eyes at such a statement. Only Bon Clay laughed wildly on the side. I'm actually quite looking forward to that. Kazan raised an eyebrow and then smiled cryptically. Hey, don't cause trouble. You wouldn't want Robin's situation to be known by more people, right? Then the world government will come after the Navy. Dak warned Kazan. Aren't you afraid? I'm not. People from the world government can't even enter this door. Don't believe me? Try sending someone. I just want to ease the pressure on Sengoku. Dak spoke sincerely. If Sengoku was pressured by the world government, it might indeed reduce the frequency of their visits to the Mystery Hatchery House, potentially affecting their business with the Navy. You really make it difficult for me as an admiral. Kazan seemed a bit troubled by this and glanced subtly at Robin. Robin shivered under Kazan's gaze, as if hit by his ice fruit power from afar. You don't need to scare her anymore. She's already agreed to work for me for a lifetime. Dak pulled Robin behind him. Moo! Miltank, though not fully understanding the conversation, could tell Robin didn't like the very tall man. In a fit of anger, Miltank stepped forward, grabbed a Pokemon cube, and threw it at Kazan, hitting his leg. Though it didn't have much force, Miltank's attitude was clear. I don't like you. Miltank puffed up its cheeks, glaring up at Kazan. Robin, frightened, quickly scooped up Miltank and turned around to block Kazan's view with her back. It seems I'm disliked. Kazan actually liked the pink Miltank for its courage and simplicity. It seems Marshal Sengoku and Vice Admiral Tsuru were right. Pokemon are creatures that can be nurtured and will become trustworthy partners for the Navy. Unlike the former two, Kazan wasn't interested in Pokemon's potential, but their character. Mr. Kazan, my stance is clear. Now, let's talk about your purpose here. Dak's gaze was piercing as he looked at Kazan. He, of course, knew what Kazan was here for. It's like this. The egg at Gion is about to hatch, and Vice Admiral Tsuru sent me to buy that milk. 100 bottles, here's 5 million belly. Kazan, though having more to say, took out the money first. Business first. All right, 5 million belly received. Tonight, Darkrai will deliver 100 bottles of Moo Moo milk. Darkrai. Darkrai timely floated out from Dak's shadow, greeting Kazan. Then he vanished back into the shadows under Kazan's astonished gaze. Truly incredible. End of Chapter 43. Chapter 43. Now that we've discussed official matters, we can start talking about some events from 11 years ago. Dak converted the 5 million belly brought by Kazan into 500 magical coins quietly, and then looked at Kazan and Robin with a pleased expression. Hearing Dak mention such matters darkened both Kazan and Robin's expressions. The O'Hara incident. No two people were more deeply affected than them. One witnessed Sakazuki firing on the refugee ships, experiencing unparalleled shock, which planted the seeds for their eventual parting of ways. Saul's questioning, do you truly believe what you're doing is just? Can you still stand tall after seeing this? Led him to start doubting his own sense of justice. Eventually, Kazan's act of defying orders to let Robin go, stating that absolute justice can sometimes drive one mad, proved his transformation and the deep impact of this event on him. The other lost her homeland, mother, teacher, friends, and was left with only memories, embarking on an endless dark journey until now. For both of them, O'Hara represented a past they wished not to revisit. Do you remember what I promised you before? To tell you about Saul after that. When Dak spoke these words, Kazan didn't react much, just stared intently at Dak, his eyes filled with confusion. Robin also remembered. Dak had lured her back with this question, and 3 days had passed without him telling her anything. Is Saul still alive? Robin, recalling this question, became anxious, grabbing Dak's clothes as if she wouldn't let him go until he gave an answer. Kazan, would you like to speak? Or shall I? Dak glanced at Kazan, who seemed to become somewhat uneasy standing in front of him. You knew too? What have you been hiding from me? Robin turned to Kazan. Years of observing and understanding people let her see the deep meaning hidden in Kazan's eyes. I'm curious about one thing. I was sure I was the only one left on O'Hara. Why would you know? Kazan ignored Robin and stared intently at Dak. If Dak had the ability to see through a person's past, that would be terrifying. There are many things the Mystery Hatchery House can do, some of which might even make you question your existence. Dak frowned, pondering how to explain. Like what? Going back to the past, changing history. Crossing time, going to the future. Reviving the dead, flesh from bones. For instance, making someone briefly see someone who has passed away. Dak considered his words and chose not to divulge the fantastical capabilities. The power of Pokémon is indeed miraculous, capable of accomplishing all he mentioned and more, even without relying on the powers of legendary Pokémon. Bringing someone back from the dead, relying on items from the magical shop, is also possible. But Dak chose not to share these details. Such capabilities might not necessarily make the outside world yearn for the Mystery Hatchery House, but could instead incite fear, leading them to try and erase it from existence. Especially entities like the world government, who would worry about Dak meddling with history 800 years ago, potentially erasing them from history. Dak wasn't afraid of their malicious intentions, nor did he believe they had the capability to act on them, but it would undoubtedly cause trouble. Seeing the deceased, Kazan's mouth fell open slightly, his breathing becoming hurried. Not that he harbored any greedy thoughts towards such a power. He didn't have anyone he particularly wished to see again. It was just too fantastical. And crucially, he knew the revelation of such a thing could stir massive waves across the seas. Even the allure of one piece might be overshadowed for a while. Robin stood frozen, as faces of her elders from O'Hara began to emerge in her mind. Her eyes couldn't help but show longing as she looked at Dak, wanting to speak but stopping herself. You don't have to imagine it too extravagantly. This is produced from a certain Pokemon's feather, extremely precious and rare. Even we only have one, and there are no plans to sell it, so it won't be revealed to the seas. Dak's words contained a lot of information. It elevated the image of Pokemon in Kuzan's mind while assuring him not to worry too much about this causing chaos in the seas. So, yes, I tried to use this feather on Saul, but it failed. Dak nodded, a statement that made Kuzan and Robin begin to speculate. Why would it fail? Robin asked, with her memory. How could she not grasp what Dak just said? But it was because she understood too well, her mind racing too fast, leading to some insecurity. Yet her words revealed her anticipation and joy. Because Saul isn't dead. Kuzan gave up struggling and stated the fact. Robin, upon hearing Kuzan admit it, had tears welling up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. Moo, Miltank, seeing Robin about to cry, quickly comforted her, even going as far as charging at Kuzan to punch him. But Robin used the powers of the flower fruit to pull her back. It's wonderful. Robin's myriad thoughts and words ultimately condensed into 3 simple words. No one could understand her feelings at that moment. I wasn't planning on telling you this. I hadn't realized the power of Pokemon could be so exaggerated. Kuzan shook his head, seemingly resigned, and spread his hands to Robin. You don't need to ask where Saul is now. Telling you would be pointless, He salvaged as many books as possible that were thrown into the sea during the O'Hara incident and took them to the library on Elbaf. With the help of Vegapunk, he read through all the materials and began researching the history of 800 years ago. Dak interrupted Kuzan's rambling and decisively informed Robin of Saul's whereabouts. It wasn't a secret. He was sure to satisfy Robin's curiosity, making his employee happier. However, Dak saw utter shock in Kuzan's eyes, which even trembled. Dak wondered who didn't know. Dak was genuinely puzzled. Kuzan personally let Saul go and might even have sent him back to Elbaf. How could he not know? Or did the Navy and even the world government not know about Vegapunk's contact with Saul? What was Vegapunk planning? Kuzan fell silent, unaware of Vegapunk's actions. But why would Dak know? According to his earlier statement, shouldn't he only be able to confirm Saul's survival? Kuzan calmed down internally, shocked that Dak knew such secretive information. Furthermore, the fact that Saul was let go in a staged fight, not even Sengoku knew about it. Why would Vegapunk, serving the world government, know Saul's whereabouts? Then, Kuzan suddenly remembered the Pokemon hidden in Dak's shadow. If that Pokemon hadn't emerged on its own, he might never have noticed its presence. If that Pokemon hid in shadows to gather information, there might be few in the world who could detect its existence. This realization made Kuzan start to appreciate Pokemon infinitely and decided, even if Sengoku didn't trade Pokemon, he must convince Garp and even Zephyr to mention it. Dak didn't expect his casual comment to reveal so much to Kuzan, but that also allowed him to glean something from Kazan's reaction, though it wasn't of much use to him. Robin, however, didn't notice any of this. Usually sharp and composed, Robin now looked like a little girl, her face flushed and wearing a silly smile. Her mind was filled with thoughts of Saul. End of chapter 44. Chapter 44. It seems I might have spoken a bit too much, Mr. Kuzan. Do you have anything else to say? Dak, seeing the mood cooling down, didn't plan to continue further. Enough had been said. Presumably, both Kuzan and Robin were now somewhat disoriented by what Dak had mentioned, unable to think clearly for the moment. Well, Kuzan scratched the back of his head, thought for a moment, and then looked at Robin. It seems like you found where you belong. Yeah, it seems so. Robin smiled and nodded, though she seemed not entirely sure. It felt too dreamlike for her, and, despite Dak's assurance in the face of a Navy admiral, she still felt uneasy inside. Uneasy about not finding a reason why Dak specifically needed her. Uneasy about possibly causing trouble for the hatchery. There's no seams. You belong here. As long as you don't want to leave, no one could take you away. Exactly, Robin. Feel free to stay here. Darkrai is very strong. Dak, Bon Clay, and Darkrai spoke one after the other, not minding Kazan listening on the side. Moo, Miltank also affectionately hugged Robin's leg. Even though Miltank was one of the taller ones among the babies, her head only reached Robin's knees. Characters in One Piece are generally very tall. For instance, Bon Clay stands at 2.4 meters. Robin herself is 1.88 meters tall, and with high heels, she is even taller than Dak by half a head. Eevee, Bark, Pidge, the other Pokémon also pounced on Robin, tumbling her over and expressing their affection in their unique ways. Yes, supported by everyone, Robin felt a bit more confident and responded again to Kazan's earlier remark. This place was her belonging. After drifting and surviving in the vast seas for 11 years, she could finally settle down. So, it is, huh? Now, you've grown into a beautiful woman. After hearing what Dak and the others said, Kazan chuckled softly, then turned and walked towards the door. I didn't expect to meet you in a place like this. I thought I might find you in some corner of the sea, having given up on hope or turned to evil, and then I would have to destroy the seed left by Saul, the time bomb I left behind. But you finally found a place to call home. Whether Saul did right by letting you live, I will continue to see with my own eyes. Now that you've met companions willing to protect you, live well. O'Hara has not perished. Kazan said this as he walked out of the hatchery's door, his thoughts and feelings unknown to both Dak and Robin. For Dak, although the setting differed from the original Water 7 scene in the story, the words were quite similar. This could be considered a creation of a memorable scene, bringing a slight joy to Dak's heart. Then, I look forward to your guidance in the future, everyone. Robin had never felt so at ease, her smile filled with happiness. Dak, seeing Robin's demeanor, couldn't help but nod. Kazan was right. Robin was a great beauty. The current Robin, who hadn't yet experienced the harsh conditions of traveling to Alabasta, resembled the character from the movie Z, who was rejuvenated 12 years by the reverse fruit. However, Dak thought, although the younger Robin seemed more youthful and beautiful, he still preferred the mature Robin from the Straw Hats reunion 11 years later. Manager, you seem to be looking at me in a rather rude manner. Now calm, Robin's sharpness returned. She immediately noticed the regret in Dak's gaze. It's nothing, you're overthinking. The kids here are now your responsibility, Robin. I've been asked to check on the egg that's about to hatch for Newgate. They've requested my presence. Dak broke into a cold sweat. He hadn't expected Robin to be so sensitive. Should he lament the frightening nature of a woman's intuition? Or is it just Robin's cunning nature? Regardless of which, he didn't plan to stay in the shop any longer and quickly made an exit with Darkrai. Newgate. Robin watched Dak leave, frowning as she thought about the name he mentioned. Could it be, just as you're thinking, Edward Newgate, captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, the strongest man in the world? Bon Clay seemed to guess Robin's thoughts, grinning and feeling as if he saw his past self. One of the 7 warlords, Hawkeye, and Vice Admiral Guillaume from the Navy are also among our clients. Do they know about each other? Robin was somewhat astonished, finding it hard to imagine the kind of individuals the hatchery was dealing with. Looking at these people, it felt like they were involved in top-tier dealings. They do, and they've even met each other here. Don't worry too much, you'll get used to it. Bon Clay waved his hand dismissively. Although his previous status was relatively low, which limited his perspective, he was smart enough to recognize the potential in Pokémon and the attitudes of these strong individuals. Surely, they would meet many notable figures not commonly seen, and one couldn't be surprised every time. Bon Clay's mentality had changed significantly in the past few weeks. Meanwhile, Dak and Darkrai once again arrived on the Moby Dick. Yo, Dak, you finally made it. The deck of the Moby Dick was bustling, a stark contrast to its usual scattered occupancy. Marco waved at Dak from afar. As Dak and Darkrai approached, they could see the pink egg in Newgate's hands twinkling. Judging by the frequency, it would be at least half a day before it hatches. Dak thought the eggs from the same batch should hatch around the same time, meaning Guillaume and Mihawk's eggs should also be close to hatching. They would inevitably come to the hatchery to inquire about Pokémon. He couldn't stay on a Moby Dick forever, and Dak looked up at the darkening sky. This unpredictable weather of the New World, he feared sudden thunder or hail, a common occurrence in these seas. Newgate, take the egg to the hatchery. It's too dangerous here. Dak shook his head, truly worried about the environment. If a timid Pokemon were born in such conditions, it might be scared to death. End of Chapter 45. Chapter 45 Inside the Mystery Hatchery House. Just as Dak had guessed, Gion and Mihawk indeed came with their glittering eggs. At this moment, representatives of the three major powers of the sea gathered once again. From the Whitebeard Pirates, Newgate, the 6th Division Commander Blamenco, and the 7th Division Commander Akuyo. As Newgate had mentioned, apart from him being a regular guest, the Whitebeard Pirates adopted a rotation system. One of the 7 warlords of the sea, Hawkeye Mihawk. Mihawk had brought 5 million belly, which Dak converted into 500 magical coins and pocketed. As for how that 5 million belly was acquired, Dak didn't ask, and Mihawk didn't say. It was an understanding between them. From the Navy, Gion and Tsuru. Upon entering the Mystery Hatchery House, neither of them showed any signs of discomfort. Dak guessed that Kazan hadn't reported any news after returning, which wasn't impossible, but rather very likely. Saul was personally released by Kazan, who was also his friend. He couldn't possibly discuss anything related to Saul with Sengoku. And Robin was also released by him. Not knowing what wrong Robin had done, he hoped to see her future and wouldn't want the Navy to take her away. Since the O'Hara incident, Kazan had understood. Not everything should be reported. People have different views and ways of doing things. When Sengoku blindly followed the world government's orders to issue the buster call, and Sakazuki mercilessly attacked the refugee ships, Kazan's loyalty to the Navy, or more accurately, to the Navy that follows the world government's orders, had waned. He was only loyal to his own sense of justice. Perhaps he also didn't want Robin's situation to affect the trade between the Navy and the Mystery Hatchery House. In short, Kazan hadn't exposed Robin's presence. After learning about the guests from Bon Clay, Robin chose to hide in the dormitory. She still couldn't face the people from the Navy openly. After being hunted for 11 years. It's been a while, everyone. It seems you're all quite excited. Dak greeted the group in front of him while trying to shake off his left leg. Unfortunately, he couldn't shake off Growlithe that was clinging to his leg. Thus, Dak decided to ignore it. He hoped the trainer that Growlithe takes a liking to in the future would have more patience. Otherwise, this little fur ball might drive them crazy. However, it was hard for those in the store to focus on Dak. The various amusing behaviors of the Pokemon babies were too entertaining. Manager Dak. How much longer until my Pokemon hatches? Gion held her brownish-yellow egg and asked expectantly. Very soon, in half an hour. Dak initially wanted to say 1 hour, but considering the heat lamps on the ceiling, he changed his estimate. Apart from food, does the little one's living environment need any special preparations? Tsuru asked another question from the side. Women are always more detail-oriented, and Tsuru, being a mother herself, naturally had more experience than the other men present and knew what to focus on. It depends on the type of Pokemon. Dak pointed to the Magikarp and Phoeba in the lake, then to the Rowlet in the tree. In reality, snowy environments would suit a Alolan Vulpix better, but the Mystery Hatchery House didn't seem to have such an environment yet. Maybe it would be available in future tasks. No problem. I'll need your guidance then. Tsuru was humble. In areas she was unfamiliar with, she was willing to learn to provide a better growth environment for the baby. Dak nodded. He was pleased with Tsuru's attitude towards Pokemon and didn't mind teaching her more. And before Pokemon became widely available among the public, the Navy was likely to be the organization with the largest number of Pokemon. They couldn't possibly come running to him with the same questions every time a Pokemon was born. The Navy needed someone knowledgeable on the subject. Half an hour of waiting. The three factions didn't talk to each other. Sitting idly would be unbearable for them. Gion, Tsuru, and Mihawk might be used to a more monotonous daily life. Newgate was okay too. Given his age, he was no longer as restless as when he was younger. But his two sons couldn't stand such torment, feeling uncomfortable if they weren't causing some mischief on the ship, as if ants were crawling on them. However, the Pokemon babies wouldn't let them be bored. Seeing Dak ignoring him, Growlithe ran over to Gion and Tsuru's side. He liked their aura. Growlithe, this species is serious, brave, reliable, wise, and can be said to be one of the most loyal Pokémon. Moreover, most Growlithe are kind and just. When a Growlithe is willing to approach strangers, it means they deem that person's justice worthy of their recognition. Dak, becoming a praise master on the side, lavished Growlithe with compliments. In reality, the introduction of Growlithe's species didn't mention justice. At most, its hidden ability is justified. The rest of Dak's speech was made up based on the Pokemon world. After all, in that world, Growlithe is a loyal partner of Officer Jenny. He didn't think he was wrong. Rather, he believed he spoke well. With such a speech, many from a Navy might want a Growlithe as their Pokemon, perhaps making it a dream partner for all Navy members. Is that so? What a lovely little one. Guion didn't know what Dak was fantasizing about, but having heard Dak's rhetoric, she indeed liked Growlithe even more. And with Growlithe being fluffy, energetic, and cute, how could anyone not like such a charming dog Pokemon? Wise. It was Tsuru who looked into Growlithe's intelligent eyes, doubting Dak's flattery. If Dak knew Tsuru's thoughts, he would surely protest his innocence. He never expected to be backstabbed by his own Growlithe baby. He was truly not deceiving. Growlithe's territorial sense and vigilance are among the top in the Pokemon world. Calling it wise was no issue. On the other side, Blamenco and Rikuyo somehow ended up whispering to their brother Eevee. Dak eavesdropped and was shocked. You two, who have been single for 40 or 50 years, are teaching brother Eevee how to chase girls. Stop it, you rascals. Before Dak could rescue Eevee from their clutches, Mihawk's excited voice echoed in the shop. It's hatching. End of chapter 46. Chapter 46. Mihawk's anticipation for his own Pokemon was beyond what a normal person could comprehend. He either drifted at sea seeking amusement or stayed home to daze off and nap. At this stage of his life, pure training hardly improved his swordsmanship anymore. Only battles of equal strength. He once had Shanks to alleviate his boredom and help enhance his sword skills. But now, with Shanks, a left-hander, having lost his left arm, his strength greatly diminished. Mihawk no longer found it entertaining to spar with him. Life became increasingly dull, even for a loner like him. Loneliness started to creep in. The emergence of Pokemon was like a dish suddenly added to a plain bowl of white rice, bringing anticipation and color to his life. At this moment, Mihawk was squatting on the ground, and in front of him, the deep yellow egg was slowly starting to deform. Dak watched the transformation, his eyes gradually widening, a sense of unease growing within him. When the Pokemon fully appeared, Mihawk looked up at Dak, who awkwardly turned his head away. Quack! Before Mihawk was a yellow, chubby duckling holding its round head. Psyduck, one of the three dim-wits of Pokemon. Psyduck's pupils were like two dots, its beak flat, with 3 strands of hair on its head, short, thick limbs, and a rotund belly, making it look quite dazed. Mihawk stared at the duckling, which hardly seemed like a Pokemon that could wield a sword. His gaze at Psyduck gradually became vacant, unable to imagine his future life with this duckling. And Psyduck, too, instinctively dazed off, its eyes vacant. This dazing is their way to suppress the psychic powers in their brain. This is Psyduck, a water-type Pokemon. Although staying in water might be more comfortable for him, being on land is perfectly fine too. Seeing Mihawk stunned, Dak quickly explained, Psyduck, you see, is quite a pitiful Pokemon. Their body occasionally generates a mysterious power, psychic energy. When their brain cells become active, their psychic powers strengthen. However, since they can't control this power, they're almost always plagued by headaches. To suppress the psychic energy, Psyduck often dazes off. Mihawk picked up Psyduck, not saying much. Disappointed? Not really, since it was the Pokemon he chose. He was just slightly let down it wasn't a sword-wielding type. At least, life was no longer so lonely. He stood still, deciding to see what kind of Pokemon would hatch for Newgate and Guion. Guion's egg also finished transforming. A bouncing brown rabbit with yellow curls appeared. Buniri. So cute. Guion joyfully snuggled the little rabbit into her arms. She had worried about hatching something ugly. Being a girl, she naturally preferred cuter creatures. Had her egg hatched a Psyduck like Mihawk's, Guion would have been troubled. Buniri, a rabbit Pokémon whose mood can be judged by the shape of its ears. Its ears are its most powerful weapon, while its limbs are relatively weak. Remember this when training. Dak again spoke up, providing a simple introduction. He thought that, in the future, this type of introduction should be handled by Bon Clay or Robin, letting them study the Pokémon encyclopedia before explaining to the guests. And he would focus on completing tasks. What type is it? Tsuru glanced at Buniri, finding the little rabbit full of vitality. Normal. Dak's response made Tsuru's expression turn somewhat strange. Understandable. After all, the normal type sounds very normal. Indeed, it can't compare to the strongest attack type, ground, or the strongest defense type, steel. Can you talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this type? Tsuru was concerned about Buniri's future, hoping it could help Gion. The normal type's advantage is that it has no specific weaknesses, but its disadvantage is that it doesn't excel in any area. Dak smiled, then began to confuse Tsuru. Mediocre. Tsuru's comment was sharp and to the point. Essentially, in terms of resistance, among the 18 basic types, only one type is weak against normal, and only one type strongly counters normal. That's exactly what I wanted. As long as Buniri's individual strength is strong, there's no need to worry about type matchups. Gion was quite satisfied with Dak's explanation. Unlike her sister Tsuru, she wasn't keen on delving into complex considerations, preferring straightforward battles. Tsuru had no particular thoughts on the matter, as long as Gion was content. Dak, look at this little one. It's been crying nonstop. Newgate's anxious voice came from the side. Dak looked over to see that their egg had also hatched. It was a delicate pink Pokémon with something resembling a braid on its head and 3 small bumps on its forehead. Its lower body seemed to wear oversized pink pants, looking like a pink oval egg overall. Happiny. Chirp, chirp. At the moment, Happiny sat on the ground bawling its eyes out. Newgate squatted beside it, looking troubled, almost breaking into a cold sweat. Flamenco and Rikuyo also looked overwhelmed as they made silly faces, trying to cheer up Happiny. Dak understood the situation as soon as he saw the Pokémon. Find a white, round pebble about 7 to 8 centimeters long. Dak had the current height of Happiny, merely 0.3 meters. Rikuyo, go find Blenheim. Newgate hurriedly sent Rikuyo back to the ship to find such a stone. With so many crew members, there were naturally collectors of pretty pebbles. Blenheim, the 9th Division commander, was one such person. Dak could foresee that Blenheim's treasures would inevitably be commandeered by Happiny. Refuse? Then you'll have to see if your brothers and dad agree. Rikuyo was quick and soon brought back a crystal-clear white pebble. It seemed to have been specially polished, making it very smooth. Here you go. Dak took the pebble from Rikuyo and handed it to Happiny. Chirp. Happiny hugged the pebble. After looking at it from left to right for a while, it finally showed a happy expression, then tucked the pebble halfway into its pants. Phew, Dak, what's going on? Seeing the little one stop crying, Newgate finally breathed a sigh of relief. Happiny, a normal-type Pokémon. They instinctively try to imitate Chansey by holding an egg in their arms, Chansey being their evolved form. But since they can't lay eggs themselves, they resort to substituting with similar-looking pebbles. Dak explained briefly, also advising this pebble is as important to them as their own egg. If they lose it, they'll cry and make a fuss, so remember to quickly find another one. Happiny's characteristics were quite clear, simple like a child, with their stone being of utmost importance. That's reassuring then. Newgate nodded. He thought of his good son Blenheim. The chapter ends 47. Chapter 47, Incredible. Tsuru glanced at Happiny by Newgate's side and sighed in amazement. It's truly fascinating how each Pokémon is born with its own unique characteristics, each one different from the last. This moment was too magical, too intriguing. At this time, Mihawk's gaze also changed. Compared to Newgate's crybaby Happiny, he felt his dazed Psyduck was better. He was an adept at caring for crybabies. Afterward, under the guidance of Dak and Bon Clay, everyone practiced caring for their Pokémon. Newgate and Flamenco, with their large hands, watched as Rikuyo carefully fed Happiny with a baby bottle. Holding the tiny creature in his palms, Rikuyo felt the joy of fatherhood for the first time. Tsuru held Buniri in her arms, while Gion gently wiped its little face with a towel. As for Mihawk and Psyduck, as everyone knows, Mihawk is a man with all life skills maxed out. But unfortunately, Psyduck isn't a Pokemon that requires much care, so Mihawk's skills were somewhat redundant. I'll visit again when the Pokemon are out of their infancy. If they're healthy by then, you're welcome to buy more Pokemon eggs from our mystery Hatchery House. Dak nodded, deeming everyone's handling techniques satisfactory. Even if someone like Rikuyo still seemed a bit clumsy, their effort alone was praiseworthy. Don't worry, Dak. I've never lost a child under my care. Newgate seemed very happy, confidently assuring Dak. The resilience of Pokemon is indeed strong, but it still can't compare to your son's. Dak thought of the monsters on the Whitebeard pirate's ship. If those guys couldn't be killed, that would be truly terrifying. Don't worry, Jozu and Marco will take good care of them. Newgate was aware that he wasn't quite suited to care for Happiny, because Happiny was just too small. But he knew his sons well, and some were incredibly meticulous. We'll be leaving now. Tsuru and Gion didn't wish to stay with a group of pirates any longer and prepare to leave. Wait a moment. I have a favor to ask of you all. This visit wasn't just about creating a good hatching environment. Dak also planned to discuss a matter concerning the main mission with these three. The mission required taking the little ones to 3 places for exposure. Essentially, it was like a trip. Of course, Dak hoped to visit areas with high safety standards, at least with strong enough bodyguards, because he knew all too well how troublesome the little ones could be. Pokemon like Growlithe, curious and full of vitality in a strange place. It was unimaginable. The territories of the Whitebeard pirates, Marineford on the Navy's side, seemed like great options to Dak. Moreover, this could be a publicity opportunity, especially with the Navy. Perhaps some sailors would fall for the cute Pokemon. As for Mihawk, a lone wanderer without a territory, Dak wasn't ready to let go of this prime opportunity. He wanted Mihawk to act as a bodyguard and accompany them to other places. Of course, Dak would pay for the service, not expecting Mihawk to work for free. After Dak mentioned this, the Whitebeard pirates agreed without hesitation. They were absolutely confident in the control over their territory, ensuring the Pokemon babies could play to their heart's content safely. Tsuru seemed to want to discuss it with Sengoku first. The possibility of letting the Pokemon babies enter the Marineford headquarters. If Sengoku agreed, they would need to prepare in advance. Even if they couldn't enter, Dak and the others were free to roam Marineford, as they weren't pirates. Mihawk remained silent, just quietly staring at Dak, still holding Psyduck. Dak smiled. All right, call me when it's time. Mihawk eventually agreed. He had nothing else to do anyway, and accompanying these interesting little creatures might be a good pastime. As for Dak's payment, he didn't mind. Currently, there wasn't anything he desperately wanted, maybe a strong swordsman, but Dak couldn't provide that. Thank you, everyone. With their assurances, Dak breathed a sigh of relief. This way, the main mission could be safely completed. Otherwise, the task of taking 16 Pokemon babies out with 4 adults could be overwhelming. If trouble arose, they'd have to split up to handle it. And if a Pokemon went missing, that would be a serious issue. Dak then saw off his guests. They've left. Robin, leading Miltank, who had been clinging to her, came out of the dormitory. Yes, Dak nodded, then remembered something. Speaking of which, that old man's Pokemon should hatch tomorrow. He'll probably come by then. Previously, an elderly gentleman had purchased a white-quality green egg. That egg wasn't part of the same batch as Newgate's, so its hatching would be a day later. The old man, Robin wasn't aware of this, and Bon Clay hadn't mentioned it. Yes, a previous client. Dak nodded. It would be a good opportunity for Bon Clay and Robin to handle the reception. Given Robin's ability to understand the Pokemon Encyclopedia, explaining the Pokemon species to clients wouldn't be difficult. Bon Clay. Give me 10,000 belly. Though Bon Clay was puzzled, he still handed over 10,000 belly to Dak. Take a good look, so you won't fail to recognize Pokemon or know how to explain to the clients later. Dak then placed a Pokemon Encyclopedia in Bon Clay's hands. Am I paying to find more work for myself? Bon Clay was somewhat speechless, but it was his job, so he earnestly began to study the book. Seeing Bon Clay's diligence, Dak nodded approvingly. In the future, with more clients, it would be inevitable to need someone to go out for negotiations or home services. Bon Clay's mimic fruit allowed him to transform into a bird, offering great mobility. He was fit for the job, and it was beneficial to start learning some knowledge in advance. Personal panel, Dak stretched lazily, feeling it was time to check his balance. Dak, identity, mystery hatchery house manager, novice breeder abilities, strength LV.3, agility LV.3, stamina LV.3, breeding LV.2, conqueror's hockey LV.10, armament hockey LV.1, talent detection Pokemon, Darkrai LV.100, balance 200,000 belly, 12,600 magical coins, special items. Crescent Feather, Berry Blender, 12,600 magical coins, equivalent to 1.26 billion belly. The 1,000.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.